I think we all enjoy our independent bottlers, don't we? We all enjoy eventually to get to a point in our whiskey journey when it's available to us that we start to connect with independent bottlers. And I think what's interesting about that is that they often bring different takes, different perspectives, and fresh ideas about the whiskies and distilleries that we love. It's a fantastic thing, it's a privilege. But I find it troublesome when some independent bottlers seem to so easily be able to do things much, much better than some distilleries out there. It's quite marked. And I think that trying to keep things as positive as possible tonight, I would like to share with everyone, not just my own personal opinions of which distilleries seem to be troublesome at not representing what they actually make very well. Um, I want to share the community's opinion as well, and then share a few drams with you as examples and see how they stack up, comparing indies to official releases. I'm looking forward to it, sorry, as always, and I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another vPub. Welcome to another Thursday night. Hope you're all doing very well. Hope you're sitting somewhere comfortably. Hope you're feeling healthy and in good shape, and maybe even a wee dram in your glass if you can. If you're picking this up on the replay, thank you to everybody that does so, picks it up on the replay. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Not everyone can give up their Thursday night, their Thursday afternoon. For you, those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, your Friday mornings, I understand, but I really love the interaction. For anyone that is participating throughout tonight, and at some point throughout our discussions tonight, you decide that it's worthwhile YouTube whiskey content, leave a wee like. It's not because I need it, but the algorithm, YouTube seems to like it. And what it also does more than anything, forget about that algorithm, is that somebody lands on this video and sees how long the vPub, it's a live broadcast, see how long it runs for. They need to be reassured that it's legitimate content and that it's not just me kind of randomly hanging out with some people for a live chat. We do try and put some effort into these sessions to bring meaningful discussion. If we're going to critique things, we have to justify it, but we also have to share something that is somewhat evergreen, some that people can come back to on replay the weekend after it goes out on the Thursday night, or maybe at some point in the future. So if this is worthwhile, please give it a wee thumbs up. I really, really appreciate it, and I always forget to ask everyone. I am hoarse of throat. I am pretty much recovered. Thank you all for your messages of support. Get well soon, all of that type of thing. It was just some sniffles. It's just a wee head cold, and I'm almost over it now. I don't think I'm nosing things perfectly, but I'm tasting okay. But I'm also a little bit hoarse. I think it didn't help this week, my voice in general, that I was jumping up and down on Tuesday night. You know, I don't imagine that everyone that joins the vPub is into football or interested in football. Certainly not maybe international football or whatever, but for things, Scotland is a happier place right now. The general positivity and energy levels and general state of mental health in Scotland has taken a significant jump in the last couple of days. So, you know, if you find yourself at a loose end and you don't know what happened on Tuesday night, Google the Scotland World Cup qualifying game against Denmark at Hampden on Tuesday night, and maybe you can see some highlights because it was truly spectacular. And yes, we were, my entire family was jumping up and down and shouting at the TV, and it was great fun. My excuses are over. This could have been a negative session. This could have been a negative vPub. And if I'm not careful, it might slide into too much negativity, and that's not my intention. In fact, I fought against this because a couple of years back when we did the top 10 distilleries And that grew into being the top 40 distilleries that then Dramface adopted, and they look after that chart now. That's their top 40, and it's a rolling chart. And you can go to dramface.com and you can add your votes, and you can change your mind at any time. And occasionally, every few months, Dramface takes snapshots and share what the top 40 is. We had a lot of people in the community coming to us and saying, hey, we realise you don't need to run a chart for all 150 plus distilleries in Scotland, but maybe it would be worthwhile doing the 10 bottom distilleries so we can see who deserves a wooden spoon. I felt that was cruel. I didn't want any chart to throw mud at things. I think you don't want there to be a permanent kind of shit list. You don't, that's not what I'm about. I don't think it's what Dramface is about. And I don't think that's particularly proactive. So I think if you're going to put things down at the bottom of any chart, I think you need to contextualize it, you need to justify it, and you need to try and explain, or at least give some feedback why you think that is. So I wasn't interested in ever doing the worst 10 distilleries or anything close to that. So to put a positive spin on things, when distilleries are doing things poorly, we have to be able to show, to demonstrate that that's the case. I think that for some distilleries, some of the time, and some distilleries most of the time, we can connect with independent bottlings, which I believe better represent what that distillery actually makes. The official bottlings, the core releases that come out from that distillery, I often feel are handled cynically, clumsily, for reasons other than the whiskey, things that prioritize not the product that they make, but the profit that they're trying to make. And that's understandable. They're a business. But whiskey is not a kind of short-termist thing. Whiskey is a long-term thing. What's getting made today is probably not going to be enjoyed until years and years and years in the future. And I think that once you've made that product and you've matured it over all of those years, the least you can do is at least put out an earnest, honest product that best represents the whiskey as much as possible. Tries to get the balance right between engagement, accessibility, affordability, quality, taste, flavour, everything. I think that that's all being swept aside right now in certain quarters for pure profitability. Very short-term mindset. Anyway, that's my general suspicion and belief. I don't know if it's what you believe, but I put a poll out just earlier this week, and a couple of hundred of you have stepped forward to take your time and go through all the distilleries that have got official products, official core ranges out there. And you've shared with us what you think and where you think things are being mishandled a little bit. That's what we're going to get into tonight. I'm going to go through it with a bottle parade like I often do. I've got 3, 4, maybe 5 bottles, depending on how things go tonight. I've got a busy day tomorrow, so I would like to try and keep the vPub neat tonight. But as you know, as you very well know, I say that quite a lot. It just takes as long as it takes. And if you guys are here hanging out with me, I'm very, very grateful to have you. And we'll just take as long as it's going to take. Before we get into all of that, I'll raise a wee glass to welcome everybody. I'll jump into the lounge and welcome all of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Welcome. It's nice to have you. This is a decent wee dram from a distillery that I can very rarely say that about. We'll get into that in a second. How are you all doing? I'm going to scroll back up and catch some of the orange. Everybody that was saying hello to me. It shows up in orange for me if you type Aquavitae or at Aquavitae. If you're on a mobile device, especially an Apple mobile device, it's a wee bit clumsy, but if you're on a keyboard, it's pretty easy. And I can try and interact with you as much as I can tonight. Derek McGrainer, my pal from Ireland, is here saying good evening, folks. Aquavitae, and good evening, Gaffer. Nice to see you. Derek's always brilliant to welcome you in, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. Kerben Blocker from the Netherlands is saying good evening, Aquavitae, as is David Lorenko from Portugal, saying drama in hand, rant at will. I'm going to try and keep the ranting to a minimum, but there may be moments that I think it's a wee bit necessary. Andy Hells, good to see you, Andy. Saying evening, Roy. In from the start this evening with an Indie Chininic in the glass. Perfect and on theme, buddy. I wonder if you would think, well, there's only one Chininic out there, right? The Flora and Fauna. 10-year-old Chininic in the Flora and Fauna range. There's a single grain Chininic out as a special releases this year. I have yet to try it. and there's been a couple over the years, but it's probably one of those distilleries that we can only really connect with through the Indies. Maybe not the focus for me tonight, but it might appear in the poll that I've put out for you guys. I was only going to share the top 10 of that poll, but because there was a couple of draws or tied, it ended up being a top 12 and whatever I could fit on screen. But I'll share that all with you in a wee second to see what the community think. Alan Smith is saying, "Evening, Roy. Hope you're feeling better." Almost. I'm about 90%, Alan. So I'm almost back to. You can probably hear it in my voice and my sinuses a wee bit. It's freezing cold outside as well right now. There's a really cold snap here. It's a wee bit icy, and I don't think that helps because you're going in and out from the warm to the cold, and the sniffles just never seem to be able to leave. But I'm feeling good, Alan. I hope you are too, buddy. And it's nice to have you in. Whiskey Weekend Dram. Harold, saying good evening, Aquaviti. Good to have you in, my friend. How are you keeping? And Ryan McCleve in Ireland is saying evening, Aquaviti. Cheers. Cheers to you, Ryan. Nice to welcome you, buddy. I hope you're keeping well. Jerry Miller is saying an independent hello, Roy. Good to see you, Jerry. Do the report. That's my pal Mike. Aquavita, evening, Roy. I guess I'll stay on topic. I'll open my Living Souls and ex Thompson Brothers 3-year-old slancher. So an independent bottling there. We don't know for sure what's in that bottle, but the chatter's out there as to what the two. There's an 18-year-old more or less blended with a 6-year-old more or less. And obviously there's some 3-year-old component in there as well. 50 quid a bottle. It's gone down very well. People are loving it. Went out in a Dramface review, I think last week or maybe earlier this week. Hope it's gone down well for you, Mike, and it's nice to have you in. Fairnight Walker is saying, good evening, Aquaviti, Roy, and dear Barfly. So good to see you all again. Wonderful to have you in. Fairnight Walker, I think you're in South East England, are you not? Maybe mistaken. Apologies if I am. Pal Danny Keenan is here. Evening, Rakoviti. Hope you're well and great seeing you at the Glasgow Whisky Club on Monday evening. It was fantastic to have you, Danny. Brilliant to hang out with you for a wee while. I hope you're still in Scotland and still enjoying it, buddy. I'm sure you enjoyed Tuesday night. It was bliss. Jimmy Legg is here. Good to see you. Hi, everyone. Missed you all last week. Even you, Mr. Duff. It's notable, Jimmy. We missed you too. It was picked up upon, not least from me as well. We managed to string things together. We managed to get through things without you, buddy. But it's a lot easier when you're here. It's nice to have you back, my friend. Big Jimmy Jazz is in saying, good evening, Aquaviti. Really enjoying a What Whiskey 11-year-old Royal Brackla. Nice on theme, Jimmy. And it's wonderful to have you in. I wonder why you're Big Jimmy Jazz now. You've always been big, buddy. You've always been. Rick Johnson is here. Good to see you. The Whiskey's Only saying good afternoon from San Francisco, Roy. And wonderful Barfly buddies. Always nice to welcome you in, even if it's the middle of the day for you, my friend. Whiskey Weekend Drama saying congrats, Aquaviti. Also loved the game. Really good. Surely the whole world enjoyed that game. Maybe with the exception of course, my Danish pals that are potentially hanging out or watching this. But, you know, you're still in the playoffs or whatever. But as a game, even as watching that as a neutral, I don't think Scotland played particularly well. Certainly in the after the first goal went in, I think we just lost. Anyway, doesn't matter because the game had, as a game of football, as a spectacle, it had everything. It was difficult. I think it was a difficult game to script better than it played out. I loved it. That's all we need to say about that. Sorry. Alberto, Road to Dram in Italy. Good to see you, buddy. Saying good evening, Roy. Well done to Scotland. Doing much better than Italy right now. I don't doubt for a second that I think Italy are heading for the playoffs, aren't they? I don't doubt for a second that we'll see the Italians there. They always seem to make it, buddy. Lauderty is here. Good to see you. 3 of the best Scottish goals ever, all in the same match. I always feel a wee bit sorry for the second goal. Lawrence Shankland goal. That was a critical goal. And I felt it was a very, very good kind of poachers, strikers, sniper goal, right? He was there, and it looked like that could have gone in on its own, but he was there to make sure that it did. And that really, everybody's talking about these kind of spectacular goals, but Lawrence was obviously there to put that second goal. Why am I talking about it again? Sorry. Castrens Jenny's here. Good to see you, Jenny. That's Jenny Mitchell, I think. Good to have you in. She's saying, Aquavita, I'm still waiting for my voice to return too. What better way to celebrate our Diddy Wee team than with a dram? We love them, though, don't we, right? Henrik Schmidt is saying, congrats from a Dane with the tickets for the FIFA World, a vPub from the US next year. Henrik, thank you, buddy. I hope you do well in the playoffs. I doubt very much if we'll be heading to the States for next year. There's a lot of people. There's going to be so much demand. It's going to be crazy. I don't think North America, whether it's Canada, Mexico, or the United States, I don't think the Americas, let's say, have any concept of how passionate European football fans are, but Scottish football fans, we're passionate in the party sense. And I don't know if you have any idea what you're in for. It's going to be fabulous to see. There are no bad distilleries, just badly handled output. I think if we were to take a strap as the way we could potentially finish tonight, Jimmy, I think that would be a good one to remember till the end. Finally, Dunn is saying, when did you realise it was a football and not the whiskey that made you feel like that? It was a hell of a first call. It was euphoric. It was absolutely euphoric. Taylor actually is here. Good to see you. He's saying, I agree, we try to keep it positive, but sometimes you just have to call it as it is. Poor management and treatment can easily result in poor whiskey. Listen, I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with it, because if it does get negative or ranty, or if the critique gets laid on a wee bit thick tonight, I have to look out there at the wide kind of whiskey spectrum and try to understand where the critique can be drawn from. Where are producers going to see how their product is being received? Because Whiskey Base is a fantastic resource, for example. There's often not a lot of context in Whiskey Base, and it can be difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff and things. And I think the people that are on Whiskey Base are a wee bit like us in here. They're at the extreme end of things. So I think if you're going to, it's like any consumer space. If you're going to want things to improve, if you're going to want things to be better, we need to speak up when we find it to be suffering, when we find it to be less than it could be, I think. But I don't think we can just stand there and say, this is not good, full stop. I think we can, and that's going to be the focus tonight, we can say that I think this could be better, and here's why. And it's usually the independent bottlers that help us do that. Everyone just saying ahoy, malt mates. Good to see you, Chris. Always wonderful to welcome you here. Any Red Mordecai's in saying, I'm drinking Fettercairn 22, delicious, but expensive. I think the 22-year-old is just a bit far too expensive, honestly, Reb. It's nice that you're enjoying it. Some fantastic things coming out from Fettercairn, but be very careful, look at the bottle specs. It's the natural stuff that's really displaying how beautifully fruity and tropical, especially when it's, in my personal opinion, from refill or bourbon casks, because it really enhances that tropicality of Fettercairn. Andy Hills is saying, no Scotland, no party. That's absolutely true, coming from an Englishman as well. Ian Bruce is saying, whiskey industry is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you will get on the day. However, Ian, would you agree with me that we eventually grow to trust some independent bottlers? A label, whether it's the Thompson Brothers, Signatory Vintage, more recently Living Souls, Fragrant Drops, North Star, I could go on and on and on and on. Because independent bottlers have only got that product. They're not relying on decades of brand loyalty or brand building that they've done. They have to make sure that each example that's released is as good as it can possibly be. They only bottle and release when they feel it's ready. That means that some of the best experience we have with distilleries is often through independent bottlers. It often shows up, despite the depth of stock, the depth of resources that official outlets potentially have in their product development of core ranges and things like that, it often shows just how clumsy these releases can be. Shortcuts, dilution, relying on colouring, relying on filtration to support that dilution. This is malt whiskey we're speaking about tonight. It doesn't like to be diluted. It doesn't like it at all. You need to chill filter it when you dilute it too much. That takes away flavour and it takes away mouthfeel and texture. We know this. We know this. Often, when you're diluting it as well, you need to add colour. Sometimes that colour is there for consistency. Oftentimes that colour is there just because darker whiskey sells. It's just a fact. That means that cynicism creeps in. Also, there's an emulsifying effect from the addition of E150 caramel. So it can add to that experience of something being smooth. I think this is a shame, because when a whiskey is made well, a few percent higher ABV in order to keep things integrity forward and intact, mouthfeel, texture, a few degrees extra ABV doesn't change that accessibility. Flavour is a more potent hook to get people interested and converted into enjoying whiskey than smooth, in my experience. People are surprised at what they can taste in whiskey when it's high quality, when it's good stuff, and they taste beyond that kind of generic whiskey flavour that they expect. Everyone is saying, whether it's an independent bottler or an official, trust is always the issue, is it not? The big surprise is independents of Bowmore and Dalmore are so much better than official bottlings, in my humble opinion. No. I think you tee us up quite nicely there, everyone. Let's get on with this. The best thing I can do is just share the public poll to start things, okay? That way it's not just me standing in my soapbox. I get to share with you what, it's a small sample, 207 people I think voted. The poll just went up on the run up to the vPub tonight. And, you know, it does take people time to click in, to leave their email and things. The reason I've asked for emails is I'm not going to send you emails. I don't need to see who you are. It's none of that. The reason I've asked you to sign in is I just don't want people clicking in and clicking in and clicking in and just spamming the thing. So there has to be a level of integrity in there. But 200 plus of you step forward to share and click the text boxes, the radio button, sorry, or check boxes, sorry, of the distilleries that you felt were doing a poor job, that were better represented by indies. That means that the whiskey that they make is potentially very good, but the whiskey that they sell, the bottle and sell, doesn't really represent that. Let me share that with you. Rick is saying, do you think there will be Barfly branded fragrant drops release anytime in the future? That discussion has, I like to be coy about these things and keep my cards close to my chest, but that discussion hasn't happened at all, Rick. Ian Williamson is saying, he's responding on the fragrant drops thing. I think Barfly fragrant drops, what a cracking idea. Okay, let's go to, would that be a reasonable thing to do? Oh, yeah, I'll do it this way. I can make that pop up. And I'll show you the question that I asked in this poll that I put out. This isn't verbatim. You know, there was a wee kind of introduction, that type of thing to let people know. But in essence, it was like I just asked people to check those boxes where they strongly felt that the official distillery bottlings are far poorer than they should be, based on the idea that the independent bottlers have done a better job of presenting great quality, enjoyable liquid than the distillery owners themselves. And they could go through, I think obviously I didn't leave distilleries in that list that hadn't released any core ranges or official products yet. But anybody that has released ever, even a single bottling of an official product, was left in that list. So I think we had about 140, 130, 140 distilleries, not sure. And this is what they came up with. 207 people stepped forward just to take their time to do this exercise. I thank you all. The people that have done this are probably people that are connected and understand independent bottlings. They have accessibility and availability of independent bottlings. And I know that a lot of you, depending on where you are on Planet Whiskey, might be tricky for you to get hold of some of the independent bottlings that demonstrate the concept that I'm speaking about tonight. However, you can still help and you can still be helped by the topics tonight, because we're going to highlight some core ranges that you do have access to that we have found consensus as a community that's potentially not worth your time. This is a top 12 chart. Let's share it with you now. I can tell you that in 12th place, I need to probably click on the screen. Is that why it's not happening? Yes, there we go. In 12th place, we have the only Jura's distillery in the list. So we're not going to see an appearance from the likes of Clynelish or from Altmore, other products within their lineup. Royal Brackla was already mentioned tonight, that seem to be well received and well respected. And I have a theory about that. Tonight, I'm going to dwell a little on a distillery that doesn't get enough airtime on the vPub, and that is the Southern Highlander of Aberfeldy. And it makes it into your list, sneaking in 12th place. In 11th place, we've got Linkwood. A little bit like that Chileanic 10-year-old we mentioned, the only real accessibility of official Linkwood that we have, unless it's the special releases, is the Flora and Fauna release of Linkwood. I have to say I'm surprised that this gets in here because I actually quite like I like the Flora and Fauna range in general. As you know, it's a wee bit of a fetish of mine, but it is 43%. It's chill filtered. It certainly could be better. And that is not only proven by indies, but Diageo prove it themselves when they do release a Linkwood in the special releases. 10th place, we've got Dalmore. There will be further mentions of White and Mackay distilleries tonight, but they're interesting that one of the most pedestal-driven brands out there in whiskey is Dalmore. And I think that people take an aversion to Dalmore because we all know that it's heavily, heavily reliant on colour at times. We can find that that emulsifying effect can flatten out the profile, along with the dilution and the very low ABV that it's often presented at. It's tricky to get your hand on on independently bottled Dalmore, but it does exist. Obviously enough for it to be made, for it to make it into the top 12. Here's our second entry from Diageo, not the last. This is a surprise to me, and it's one that I've chosen to dwell upon this evening. One of my favourite distilleries is the Northern Highlands distillery of Clynelish. 72 of you have decided that Clynelish, the official bottling, there is only one. That's the 14-year-old at 46%. Despite the higher ABV of that official bottling, you've decided that for whatever reason, Clynelish is not often well represented by the official range. 8th place, we've got another Diageo entry, Mortlach. I think this is in here for a couple of reasons. I think it's in here because Mortlach is one of the most distinctive spirits that exists in single malt Scotch whisky. And often when it's released from official sources, we find that that is somehow, it's crazy that they find it so easy to wash that aside, to dilute that weight, that body, the robustness of Mortlach. But when they do achieve it, it's often priced, inexplicably priced out of range, even for non-age statement releases. 7th place, Ardmore, the first entry, not the last, from Beam Suntory. Wee bit surprised to see this in here, but then when you think about it, it makes sense. Ardmore is one of the most popular amongst enthusiasts bottlings from independent bottlers. The standard Ardmore official releases, they've extended it a couple of releases more than just the standard legacy in recent years. But that standard legacy, they used to have a cracker out there. The unchill filtered release used to be much, much better, even though it was non-age statement. This legacy that they have today, minimum ABV it can be. It's a supermarket, mass market whiskey. We understand its place, but we know the quality of the whiskey that's made at Ardmore, and we love this stuff. The official bottling doesn't even give us a glimpse at that. Auchentoshan in 6th place. Personally, I expected this to be much higher. This is a local distillery for me. It's very close to Glasgow. A distillery that's close to my heart as a place to go and visit, a place to understand. Unfortunately, it's really frustrating that it's very difficult to get anything from the official range that represents anything that they're actually making there. If you do one of the premium tours at Auchentoshan and you get to taste some kind of more higher end things, especially if it's cask samples or that type of thing, it's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful whiskey. It's probably going to be the first thing that I talk about this evening because I have an official bottle of Auchentoshan available to me tonight. We've got a tie In fourth place, I think this is, between Macallan and Clynelish, tying at 103 votes each, but for completely different reasons. Macallan is always naturally coloured. That's a huge feather in their cap. I think it's something to be applauded. However, it's ridiculously overpriced. We know this. It is. It's so difficult for the whiskey to live up to the price point at times. We've also got two different types of Macallan out there, I believe. We've got Macallan that was made at the previous Macallan distillery, and that's what the reputation has been built upon. And then we've got liquid starting to come out now from the new distillery, and I have still to drink or enjoy anything from what I believe is produced at the new distillery where I would hold it up and say this is a good whiskey. I've just not come across it yet, but that's obviously much more difficult for me to do when the prices are so prohibitive. I have one bottle of official Macallan in the vPub, and that is the single official bottle of Macallan that I've purchased in over a decade. And yet, I do have Macallan liquid on the shelf from Indies. In third place, we've got another Edrington entry right next to it. It's actually managed to creep above Macallan, but I don't think that this is necessarily about how poor the official releases are, because some of the official Highland Park releases are actually quite tasty bottles. I think this is here because there's just so much independently bottled Highland Park out there. Often it's not bottled as Highland Park. Often we see it as a secret Orkney or a secret Highland. Lots of kind of hiding behind and trying to protect the brand. Unfortunately, I think what they're doing is, because Indies are bringing out the better products, by hiding the brand, they're actually doing themselves a disservice. We'll probably talk about that a wee bit more a bit later on. Second place, personally, this is my number one spot. But it's nice to see there's some consensus with you guys, 116 of you suggesting that the official releases from Bowmore are not representative of the legendary, fantastic whiskey that they make on Islay. It's the most disappointing for me. We made well a little bit on Bowmore this evening. I hope we get to Bowmore. I think it's worthwhile talking about it. It's heartbreaking because we know how amazing that liquid is. The official stuff from Bowmore, especially the affordable entry-level stuff, 12-year-old, the knowledge statement that sits underneath that, and then moving on to the 15 and beyond. I mean, these are just flat, insipid liquids when the base malt that they were made from could have been potentially much better, in my opinion, which means that it'll surprise no one that right at the top of the charts is the other White and Mackay entry, Jura. And I want to defend Jura a little bit. I understand why they're at the top of this chart. I understand it completely. But I think that Jura, and we have to talk about how successful Jura is as a product, as a brand. It's the single fastest growing malt whiskey, I believe, in Europe now, but certainly in the UK over recent years. We see things being footered with, being played with at Jura in a positive direction. So before I move on to Auchentoshan, I think it might be worthwhile to talk about that. Jura is a mass market whiskey. This is supermarket whiskey. It goes to multiples. It goes to lots of places, but it exists in other places too. It exists in travel retail. It exists in specialist retailers. It exists all over the place. It tends to be driven by price point. By far the most liquid sold and consumed of Jura is going to be sold and purchased fairly cheaply and just enjoyed as a casual drink, which is absolutely fine. Unfortunately, we are suspicious that Jura actually make much better whiskey than those bottles represent. And I know that you agree with me, but I want to hold up this. And it's been on the vPub quite a few times now. And I want you to zoom in on that. Do you see the messaging there? Non-chill filtered, natural colour, 16-year age statement, 46.5% ABV. This is a full-on, fully natural Jura, 70 quid. I've seen it on sale for less than that. I've seen it affordable for 16-year-old malt. Quite sweet whiskey. I have to caveat, if you like sweet whiskey, you'll like this. Wonderful. Nothing to talk about, nothing to argue with. This is a good representation of Jura, and it's an official bottling. So I don't think when it's bringing out a product like this that it's deserving of the top spot. But this is a legacy thing. And when people spend money on something that they feel is flat or diluted or watered or a bad representation of the distillery, you know, wallets, palates, enthusiasts, we have long memories, and we're not going to put our money back there again. So when a poll like this comes up, and it's an easy checkbox to tick for so many people. However, once more in defence of Jura, with the Perspectives series coming out, that Perspectives 01 in particular at 16 years old, I think that's a nice step in the right direction. So we won't be dwelling on Jura tonight. What we will be dwelling on are things that, what's happened to my window? Let me fix that, because I need to be able to chat to you guys, of course. Yeah, there you are. So what do you think about that wee poll? Anything that surprises you there? I'll scroll back up. Whiskey Weekend Drama is saying, peated Jura out of a rum cask. Absolutely amazing. From Milroy's Aquavitae, independently bottled Jura. Rick Johnson is saying, your graph skills are on fire. Thank you, Rick. My goodness. Fairnight Walker is saying, curious that Jura is beginning to show some good changes. Others like Tam the Villain doesn't, but they're not in the list. Very curious. I don't think anyone's buying Tam the Villain, but they're not on the list because I don't think it's easy to get an independently bottled Tam the Villain. I do have one here. This is actually a gift brought to the gathering from Stevie O. This is I've not tasted this whiskey. There's some out of it, but it wasn't me that was drinking this. So it was here and it was in the running for me to sit a little bit. But then I realised I don't have an official Tam the Villain on the shelf, and I don't think I've had one for years and years and years. Tam the Villain is doing a very good job of getting people to maybe taste whiskey and come into whiskey at 40% ABV. It's of course coloured and diluted, and it can be a wee bit flat, but they've got these different kind of entry-level, very, very inexpensive whiskies with completely different flavour profiles. So they get a little bit of a let-off for at least being a kind of gateway flavour-driven product. And because there's so little Tam the Villain independently bottled, and also even if there was, I don't know how many people will be tripping over themselves to pick it up. Because there's so little of it, I think that's why it doesn't appear on the list. Nightwalker. John Ginger Genius is saying, evening Roy and all you barflies, good to have you in, John. I hope you're keeping well, buddy. Andy Hills is saying, sadly pulling a very early parachute between long trying day, and I'll catch up in the rebase. Slant you all working really hard right now, Andy. It's wonderful to have you in. I hope you're keeping okay, and I hope Helen is too. Drew from Arizona, good to see you, Drew. How are you keeping, fella? He's saying, we'd have done this poll, but just haven't had both official and independent of many distilleries Aquavitae. Only 3 of the top 12 I've tried. Wish I had the Clynelish flora and fauna to compare. I did caveat that, Drew, at the start. I knew how difficult it would be for people to participate in that poll based on the availability, especially of the indies that they could get a hold of. But even in the case of the flora and fauna, that's a very, very European-focused product. I get exactly what you mean, Drew. And whiskey 2525, that's Andrew, isn't it? I think it's Andrew. He said, Little Brown Dog released a Tam the Villain not long ago, and it's still available. They do exist, absolutely, but they tend to be occasional. Stevie 6868. I wonder what Stevie that is. Is that Stevie O? It's wondering if everybody's changed. The YouTube just keep messing around with the handles from everyone. I don't know. Try it, Roy. I'll let you. That is Stevie O. Of course it is. Thank you, Stevie. Armand Van Norman is saying, Aquavitae is a credit to indies that the likes of Jura have started to change and produce natural whiskey. I would like to think that it's got something to do with it. Yes. I would like to think that enthusiasts have got something to do with it. I would like to think that a rational critique has got something to do with it. But actually what I think it is that there's usually somebody in a position of decision-making power that says, let's try this and do something a little bit differently. I think that's what's happening at White and Mackay, at Fettercairn, at Jura, potentially Tam the Villain, potentially other places in the future. So that's my personal opinion. It's down to somebody with a bit more of a passion for whiskey, the product that they make. Finally Done is celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 23 months. Thanks, Finally Done. He's saying the dark arts of the Indies, my favourite subject. Thank you, buddy, for keeping me supported through the Barflies. What you're doing is keeping all the content on YouTube completely ad-free by signing up for the Barflies. You get access to all those channel-themed emojis and the wee loyalty Barfly too. It's nice to have you, buddy. Thank you. Dave W in Australia has bought me a wee dram as well. Thank you very much, Dave W. No comment or anything, just a dram. Thank you so much. To your health. Cheers. Hongi. Oh, that looks like David Hong. Again, YouTube's messed up the handles here. I'm not reading it. I think that's David Hong. I suspect that it is. He's bought me a dram as well with no comment. Stevie has very generously sent out 20 Aquavite gift memberships. That's 20 new Barflies, just randomly gifted a gift membership tonight. Thank you, Stevie, for your fantastic support and generosity. And Jimmy Legg has bought me a dram as well to say, have you had much Douyin? Every drop I've had, all independent bottlings, has been really great. Again, you're summarising everything in statements like that, Jimmy. I was talking about this very recently. Almost all, maybe all the Diageo distilleries make fantastic liquid. Really. That's why, back in the day, the special releases used to be so anticipated. What comes out from Diageo in the official bottlings, the core range stuff, is all lower ABV, chill filtered and polished, and sometimes coloured, and doesn't represent how good the whiskey is. But when we get our hands on a Douyin, a Linkwood, a Clynelish, a Benrinnes, and multitude of other distilleries that Diageo own, we taste that they are wonderful. Clynelish would be a great example, Jimmy. I've tasted quite a few Douyins very, very recently even. Sevi was sharing an absolute cracker at the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. And we love it when we get a good one. Petehead is saying the YouTube handles can be changed. People need to click on their picture, then go to their channel and change the handle. Sometimes name is taken, but then choose wisely. Thank you, Petehead. Thank you for helping with that. So if you've got something crazy going on and some name and numbers nonsense, click on, take you back to what's your holding page for YouTube, and you can change the settings there. And I've got a better chance of working out who you are, the way that YouTube are messing around with things right now. All right, okay, let's get into what I've promised then. In my glass tonight, the welcome dram from everyone is a Beam Suntory whiskey. This is made at Auchentoshan. This is an independently bottled Auchentoshan. Why? A couple of reasons, but I don't really have any Auchentoshan core range. I used to, some people would gift me Auchentoshans because they knew I liked whiskey and things like that. Would pick up a bottle of malt and bring it in and gift it. But generally speaking, it's been a long time since I've had any American oak, 12-year-old, triple wood, any of the 40% nonsense that I don't think sips anything like. Is that my light gone out already? Do you see that? I have no idea why that happens. Some weeks it stays on for hours, and other weeks it just kind of gives up. No idea. Investment required, I think. Anyway, this is an official bottling of a Auchentoshan. That's not what's in the glass. The reason I picked this one up is because I read a couple of reviews on it that suggested it was quite good. 47% ABV, higher ABV. This is interesting to me. Wonder why that is. And I suspect this was because it was going to be a wee bit like the bartender's malt from them. It was going to be encouraged to be used as a mixed drink. Actually, what they try to do with this thing is to get you to freeze it. They want you to freeze this whiskey and enjoy it cold from a frozen glass or over ice, that type of thing. And that's heartbreaking to me. It's heartbreaking. Listen, if anybody wants to freeze their whiskey, if anybody wants to enjoy really cold whiskey or enjoy whiskey over ice as a nice refreshing drink, go right ahead. It can be wonderful, right? And it's perfect that a thing like this, it can do such a thing. But I also think that you would want it to be capable of doing more than just that. Fortunately, this is an interesting wee whiskey, and I think it's a decent Auchentoshan. I want you also to notice that it's quite pale compared to normal Auchentoshans as well. So if there is colouring in this, they've probably been quite careful with the colouring and not overloaded it too much, which I think can happen in some of the other expressions. But this is a Sauvignon Blanc, finished, vibrant and fresh. They're calling it 47% ABV, and it wasn't too expensive either. Still, if this is as close to the official bottlings can get for me to get interested, that's a sorry place to be. It's a Glasgow distillery, it's a malt distillery, it's pretty unique in the Scotch whisky landscape, it's exclusively triple distilled. I think it's an interesting distillery with a lot of history, and the fact that they're just kind of continually pumping out this thing that seems to actually be getting weaker and worse as the years go on rather than better, I think it's a shame. I really do think it's a shame. Now, I want to be clear, that American oak and that 12-year-old, the entry-level products, they have their place, even the triple wood. But it doesn't need to be exclusively anchored in those whiskies. They can come along with something that's much more natural, a wee bit premiumized. It's going to be more expensive if there's more alcohol in the bottle. That makes sense. Something that doesn't need to be coloured, something that doesn't need to be chill filtered, something that can just be about let's select some really good casks that work really well together and represents our distillery to its best, at its best. Enthusiasts and geeks and people like me, people that are invested in whiskey, people that understand what a good whiskey should cost potentially, are likely to pick that up. Might take a while because we've been put off so many times by very, very weak or poor official releases from Beam Suntory, misrepresenting Auchentoshan. I say misrepresenting because I have in my glass an independent bottler that I've not really heard of. This is the first time I've ever bought anything from Whiskey Craft. I don't know who they are, but hey, this was a 20-year-old that was the talk of the Steamy at the Glasgow Whisky Festival. Many, many, many of you had tried this. Have you tried the 20-year-old Auchentoshan? Have you tried? In the end, it sold out, but there was some still available online. I can't remember who sent me the link. I think it may have been Andy, whoever it was. Thank you so much. Managed to get a wee bottle. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't inexpensive. It was hovering around the 100 and something, 110, 112 pounds. Can't remember. But this is 20-year-old malt. When I saw the specs, especially, second fill hogsheads, this is 2 decades left alone. This isn't a recask or a finish or anything. It looks like the cask type for this one has spent all its life second fill. This is second fill hoggies. Fantastic. Refill hoggies. 225 bottles. Bottle 222 I've got. 55.1% ABV. Now, my nose is still a wee bit blocked up, as you can hear, probably. But I can get a lot of lovely light fruit. A bit of pineapple from this. A bit of lychee. A bit of white melon flesh. That type of product. That type of fruity character. But there's also a bready element to this. A bit of a kind of fermentation room quality. A bit of banana bread. A bit of green banana in here too. But spongy Madeira loaf. A thick malt character, like almost like Maltesers, Horlicks, malted drinks. Plump malt. But it does not nose like 55% ABV. And when you sip this, there's edges and angles to this. This is not pure and clean and simple. It's a little bit funky and a little bit edgy. There is a bit of interest in the glass. But the quality of the whiskey is such that 55% ABV is almost smuggled in. And it doesn't arrive until you're thinking about the whiskey, you know, the retro nasal aspect of things, the finish. Then at that point, you're getting a little bit of spice, a little bit of white pepper, and you realize that the ABV is higher. But on the arrival and the development and delivering all that kind of fruit character and a lovely little bit of white chocolate as well, I'm just reminded of it now. The ABV is really quite a stealth delivery. I have another wee sip. Now, second fill hogshead. This is a single cask. And you may argue, Roy, Somebody's been able to find a gem. They've been able to find a particularly exemplary example of Auchentoshan, and that's why they've decided to bottle it. I don't agree. I think that there's a lot of this out there. Not millions of it, but enough for any time I've had independently bottled Auchentoshan for it to be twice or three times more interesting or better than any of the official bottles I've ever had. Once upon a time, 20 years ago, I was buying Auchentoshan. I was buying the 3-wood. I was buying the 21-year-old at one point. Not today. Not even close. This is where I would put my money today. Towards an indie. I would put my money towards someplace that I believe are going to do a better job faithfully representing the original malt whiskey that was actually made there. The original malt whiskey that was left in the warehouses for 10, 12, 15, I don't know how many, in this case, 20 years, wherever this has grown up. I don't know where this was matured. But it's a much, much better whiskey than we get from the official bottlings. Double, triple. It's insanely, objectively good quality whiskey. The official bottlings are insipid, are flat, are objectively poor quality malt whiskies. Lowlander, Scotland, good to see you, buddy, saying, isn't it called Auchentoshan these days with the new branding? I'll never forget Roddy's story about somebody walking in and tongue-in-cheek asking for that new Japanese whiskey, Auchentoshan. So, yes, it's they've changed it a little bit. There's a new branding in there for Auchentoshan. There's no change to the presentation as far as I can see. It's just a new pretty box. Court Mike is saying, as ale drinkers will point out, the colder the drink, the less you can taste. I always think of that when someone says it needs to be ice cold. Absolutely, we know that on whiskey. If you're ever sipping whiskey in a Dunwich warehouse, it can be an absolute thrill, a delight. But you really have to be holding it in your hands to kind of warm it up to get the best out of it and to get all those flavours and things. For malt whiskey, most of the time, we're sipping it neat. At room temperature, often with just a couple of drops in it or whatever. And even when we're putting in just a couple of drops or diluting it a wee bit or opening it up with a couple of drops, I recommend that you use room temperature water for that as well, for the reasons that Mike suggests. Just makes sense. If you chill something, the smells are much, much harder to access. Everyone is saying, I think we also have to recognise that independent bottlers are one or two casks versus official are mass produced. If I've learned anything from you and other YouTubers is that special casks exists in dry flavour. Yeah, I think that we have this concept, this romantic idea that, this golden cask, and that's what the independent bottlers will release. No, they just buy stock. They often get the chance to try before they buy, but more often than not, they don't. They buy it on spec and on paper, and they get to try the whiskey when it's eventually in their possession. And at that point, they can decide, is this close to bottling? Do we need to nurture this? Do we need to age it for a little while? Do we need to re-rack it? Do we need to finish it? Do we need to use it as part of a blend? What are we going to do with this stock now? And so you're right that to a certain extent that they're going to put the good stuff out untouched and just put it out there, and the good stuff is... But the theory behind my point tonight, everyone, is that everything an independent bottler goes out is going to have been agonised over. Every release. How can that not be happening when you've got the depth of resources of the warehouses available to you, the official source? How can you not do that when you have a team of people dedicated to following and tracking the quality of that whiskey and consistently releasing something good each and every time? And also trying to make it the best it can be. I argue the reason for it is that the people involved maybe have their hands tied behind their back because of trying to make a product to a spec, to make it as cheap as possible, to chase profit. Short-term profit, of course, because they diminish year by year the quality and the reputation of the whiskey. Puts it in a weak place. They have to sell the thing cheap, stack it high, sell it cheap, as opposed to selling quality and drive the demand. I think that independent bottlers are not always, they don't go out there and be able to just cherry pick the best casks. That tends to be not what's happening. Pedro is saying Auchentoshan is such a beautiful spirit aquavitae. It's a crime what Suntory does to it. I am starting with Auchentoshan because there's a chance that I will start and finish on Beam Suntory tonight. I believe that they are currently, as things stand in whiskey, the worst offenders. Glengarry is an exception, I would say. Laphroaig can be both things. It can be messed about with and footered with, but they also have products available from Laphroaig, that do genuinely represent what a fantastic, iconic distillery that is. Ardmore is only looked after by the independent bottlers, in my opinion. And I think Auchentoshan and Bowmore, as official ranges, are amongst some of the worst out there. We'll get to Bowmore in a wee bit. Finally done is saying, indie bottles of Glenburgie show us they are so much more than a filler distillery. But we know this about all the blends, the Longmorns out there, Glentochers, as you say, Glenburgie, these beautifully fruity, really quite characterful whiskies that are so in demand for blending purposes to make the blends better. But somehow, when they're occasionally released as official releases from the distillery, Pernod Ricard, Glentochers and Glenburgie, of course, and Longmorn, even when we see a good one, it tends to be, in a case of Longmorn, overpriced. But Glenburgie and Glentochers, pretty clumsy, if I'm honest. 40%, things like that. Doodle Drama Arnie, good to see you, buddy. I'm sipping a Fragrant Drops refill Ben Riach, 17-year-old now. And it reminds me of what I love finding in indies. Ultra-concentrated flavour that I might imagine officials are too cautious to release. Maybe there is a reservation. Maybe there is something that they want to have something that's much more accessible, flatter. But we know in our kind of experience of sharing whiskies around our dining tables or whiskey clubs, events and festivals, and we're bringing new people into things, they don't stand. It's very, very quickly they lose this idea of, oh, that's soft, oh, that's really smooth, that's dropped quite early on. What's pulling them in are flavour hooks. And the flavour can come in the direction of an extreme thing like a sherry cask or heavily peated or anything like that. But it can also come from a really bright fruit or a texture or a lovely, lovely, oily, thick mouthfeel. I think that once people get that concept into their head, they're not thinking about a drink anymore. They're thinking about an experience, and it's a completely different thing. More responsible consumption happens. The higher ABV you go, the more you need to slow down, the more you need to pace yourself and taste, rather than lower ABV, chuck it back. We are enthusiasts, and everything I'm going to talk about tonight is going to be focused on us. There's a place out there for blends, and it seems like that there's been a place carved out for malt to do that thing, to provide something just to drink. Malt doesn't like to be in that space. Malt doesn't like to be diluted to 40% as a drink. It doesn't like to be chill filtered. It doesn't like it. It starts to throw up challenges when we do that to it, which is why people add colour, which is why people polish it with chill filtration. They don't want it to go cloudy at the lower ABVs. Malt whiskey at higher ABV will retain its integrity, and it's far less likely to go cloudy. However, we need to teach people and accept that if they're going to be drinking and enjoying malt whiskey, and if they're going to drink it cold, pour it over ice, or add cold water into it, drink it in a cold place, or occasionally just because of the example of whiskey that it is, it might develop a bit of mist in the glass. And this is a marker of integrity and quality and texture and flavour. Let's move on, because I've got a couple more to share with you tonight, and not just pick on Auchentoshan. But you guys put Auchentoshan pretty high up, 6th place. I'm going to go to a Southern Highlander now. I'm going to go to the one that you put in 12th place, the only one in the top 12 list from Jura's. I think Jura's do a fantastic job. of the distilleries that they have under their stewardship. I really do. So we're talking about Macduff, of course, so that's the Deveron, Glendeveron things. That tends to be 40% ABV. I think that could be a lot better. But Royal Brackla, Altmore, Craigellachie, we've grown to love these malts. They're really, really fantastic things. Aberfeldy's kind of a bit of both. Almost all the Aberfeldys I've ever had as official bottlings have been 40% ABV here in the UK. And we're going to hold up one right now and just defend Jura's and Aberfeldy a little bit here, because what we've got here is a 46% ABV. Now, right down next to that ABV, do you see what it says there? Non-chill filtered natural colour. What is this? Alongside a 15-year age statement and not an abusive retail price. This was an easy thing for me to pick up. Right behind this stuff. This is malt whiskey getting its own way. This is malt whiskey being presented the way it wants to be presented. Fantastic. There is some trouble here, though. There is some kind of oil in the water. Look, we have some wine cask finishing going on here. This is part of their wine cask series. And those of you, I have to full disclosure, wine cask maturation, wine cask finishing is a little bit of kryptonite for me. I've found wine casks that I love in the past, specifically red wine casks, port casks, those type of things. I've found some in the past that I love and I can connect with, really, really enjoy. Famously, a fully matured Deanston Bordeaux from years ago, some long row reds over the years as examples. So it doesn't need to rely on peat. The Deanston was unpeated, of course. But generally speaking, wine is always a try before you buy for me. Here's my thing about this. Aberfeldy, for me, is a beautifully delicate heather honey, floral forward spirit style in my experience. And I think that, try as they might to step forward and do some natural, unchill filtered, less footed with whiskies, they seem to have hidden it under a wine blanket. It wasn't just one expression. There was two or three, I think, 3 different wine cask expressions that came out. And they were generally widely available. And as I say, not too expensive. But I want to connect with the true Aberfeldy character a little bit. I want to have a much more pure kind of malt experience, something a bit more to my taste rather than something that's come from wine cask. If I go to the standard Aberfeldy releases, in the UK at least, I'm at 40%. It might be 43 for export where you are, but generally speaking, we're back down into watered down, chill filtered territory. And I don't think that that's where I'm going to get the Aberfeldy experience. But I do have one in front of me right now that might offer that up. Ryan McCleve is saying, given Indie showcase how incredible a brand can be, does this not get fed back to the distillery itself? As a distiller blender, surely you want the best liquid out there. No, I think they are driven by profit. Just get it out there, make it as cheap as you can, as much profit as you can. Stack it high, sell it cheap type thing. Blends can do that fantastically well. Malt whiskey throws up challenges for any producer. Drum Mondays is saying, one of my greatest whiskey moments was a 12-year-old ex-bourbon Bowmore by Blackada. Such a shame the distillery butchers that beautiful spirit before bottling. We will get to Bowmore tonight, buddy, we will. Jimmy Legg is saying, a drink versus experience. Never really thought that exact way before. Good one, Roy. Jimmy, you've been around here for a long time. That's exactly what I talk about, how whiskey changed my relationship with alcohol generally, because I was, all the alcohol consumption, whether it was wine or beer or mixed drinks, I was using it as a drink. And all I had to do was enjoy the flavour, and that was enough. But after the first few sips, you're not thinking about the flavour. Whiskey completely flipped that for me. Every sip was so compelling that when you get a watered down 40% whiskey, a thin malt, those type of things, you realize that it's been formulated to make it easy to just drink. It's not what malt whiskey is good at. If you want to make a whiskey flavored drink, blends are amazing at that. Everwind is saying, you make an interesting point, and in some ways I agree, but I look at what Billy Walker did at Clynelish. Perhaps it's the investment of casks that differentiates independent bottlers and official bottlings. IBs do often recask. Billy Walker And anybody that's bought anything from Pernod Ricard, whether it's Tormore Distillery being purchased from Pernod, Chivas Brothers, whether it's Billy Walker Glenallachie, whether it's Edward Dower back in the day, they would have had to reinvent everything. There's a huge difference from just getting something to the legal age of whiskey and tired old wood to making a product that's going to be sold for single malt's sake. And it's all about money. Taylor actually saying, oh, when did they do that? Talking about the Aberfeldies. They're widely available. Hopefully it's reached out to you, Taylor, if you enjoy a wine cask release. We've got fully natural Aberfeldy with wine cask finishing. That cask strength Deanston Aquavite Whiskey Weekend Dramharo, you remember it from about a decade ago, right? 8 or 10 years ago. Wonderful 10-year-old product. 10 to 15% of wine cask finishing works, in my opinion, says Jimmy Legg. So he's a wee bit similar to me. He's a bit cautious. And I would suggest that in my experience, Jimmy, you're not far off. Correct here. And Barry Coleman is saying, hi, Roy. Indies are not the easiest thing to get over here, just as well. My whiskies to buy list would triple in size. It's interesting, Barry, as well, because indie bottles tend to be a little bit more kind of ad hoc. You know, it's not like you build up a list of indies to buy, because they tend to be quite transient often. It's changing a little bit. There's a lot of indies coming along with brands and batches. It is developing. They are developing core products, so to speak. But generally speaking, when we talk about small batch and single cask, they tend to be here today and gone tomorrow. So you might find that you would still accumulate, but your list to buy maybe wouldn't go too crazy. Hi all, says Ben Whiskey with Molly. Busy night tonight, heading to London early tomorrow. Catch you all in the replay. Good to have you drop in just to say hello, Ben, you star. Thank you, buddy. And Overland Rams is saying howdy from Colorado. That's Chuck. Good to have you in, big guy. I hope you're keeping well. Let's get this open. I don't think this was too expensive. 70 quid, I want to guess. This is a 10-year-old Aberfeldy at 48.5% ABV, independently bottled. And this is a Decadent Drinks release. This is their Equinox and Solstice. So Decadent Drinks are known for various very, very highly curated, very agonized over releases. It can be a wee bit pricey, but when have you ever picked up a Decadent release and it's not been anything but pretty spectacular, right? But this is a bit more accessible. This Equinox and Solstice releases from Decadent Drinks tend to be something that they can maybe release a higher strength version of, but bring out some of it at 48.5% ABV as well, and bring something that at lower ABV, a bit more mass, a larger outturn, let's say, more people can get a hold of some Decadent Drinks product to try. We can see how pale this whiskey is. Immediately, I'm kind of reassured by the pale colours, because we know that it's not going to have been footed with. There's lots of stuff on the back of this talking about autumnal flavours and that type of thing. But the key thing here is that we know that this is from 2 second fill bourbon barrels, filled in 2013, and then bottled at our favourite drinking strength of 48.5% ABV. Talks about being lean, starchy, pure, things like that. I think we'll decide, or I'll decide, how this is sitting with me tonight. Remember, the caveat with all of these uncorkings is that most whiskies, you need to build up a wee bit of a relationship right after the neck pour. You understand it a bit more. The whiskey can stretch and relax a little bit, maybe breathe, arguably, all of these things. But we just generally build a better understanding when it drops down a wee bit over the shoulder of the bottle. So these are always just first impressions. Floral immediately. In fact, Turkish Delight. Pink. This is pink flowers, pink Turkish Delight, pink heather. Let's go with some heather in here. Very floral, very, there's a wee bit of a kind of winey, cognac-y type nose thing going on too. A little bit acidic. A little bit of interesting sharpness for 8.5% ABV. Very accessible, very easy to nose. Crisp green orchard fruit, apples, orchard, apple pear, apple skins, but sweet and crisp, like kind of golden delicious leaning, rather than a tart, sharp apple. Lots of sweetness. Second fill. "10 years, I have to say this is nosing a wee bit better than that. There's really not much youth on this at all. It might be on the palate. But 10 years is plenty age for a decent malt, right? Wee bit mouth-watering. I think the acidity helps here. Slight edge, slight bit of sharpness. Mouth-watering, definitely. Cheers. So that's what Aberfeldy tastes like. I have to say, there's clear similarities between a 12-year-old Aberfeldy and what I've just sipped there. I always think of honey with Aberfeldy. I tend to be led in that direction. Runny honey. Malty. The cask here has just been ever so light touch. So there's maybe an echo in the background of, let's go with coconut fondant, like a creamy fondant. But it's a little bit floral. The fruit is not as sweet as the nose suggested it was going to be. A little bit acidic, a little bit crisp, a little bit dry. Quite firm, quite solid. It's weird, these descriptors, right? But I'm just trying to articulate as best I can based on first approach. A little bit of not chocolate, but a little bit of confectionery, maybe similar to the kind of floral Turkish delight things we were getting on the nose at the beginning, perhaps. Right down the middle. If I was this would be a kind of a good whiskey. This would be a dram face 6 out of 10 or something like that on first approach. But I know from experience with these whiskies that they will benefit from leaving them a little while. These haven't been footered. These haven't been engineered. This is pure whiskey. So what you might want to do is just grab, I always have my water dropper here. Why is there no water dropper here tonight, Roy? What have you done here? It's always here. What you might want to do with something like this, even though it's at 48.5% ABV, is just put a few drops in. And you say, well, what's the point of that? What's the point of just putting a couple of drops in? You're not doing anything. They're not doing anything. You are. You're looking for reactions in the glass. You're wakening the whiskey up. You're causing it to react a little bit. And it might not be obvious on first approach, but you just leave it for a little bit. And especially in the neck, I would say that, of course, it can be in your head. I think we've made some kind of fruit pop there. We've now got a kind of green, white grape thing going on. So you just leave it for a little bit and then you can come back. I know from experience that this is the type of whiskey that would benefit from that. At first blush, there's quite a cool, the finish here, there's a kind of cool, like an outdoor breeze, linen type thing. That this is going to be one of those whiskies that you're going to enjoy more and more as time goes on. If you are driven by spirit forward casks having a very, very light touch, this is the Aberfeldy that you want to be grabbing. If you're attracted by funky things or wine casks and that type of thing, I would also suggest that you give their 15-year-old series 46% non-chill filtered and natural colour, a bit of a try before you buy perhaps, but a bit of time as well. Henrik Schmidt is saying would love to taste some Decadent Drams or Thompson Brothers in Denmark. Gorgeous. What whiskies and Signatory are easily accessible and often great price quality regardless. Henrik is so we're saying that Decadent aren't getting to Denmark right now. Thompson Brothers not getting to Denmark. That is a wee bit of a surprise. Ben Demon Hunter is saying Slanjavaroy. Good to see you, Ben. How are you keeping, my friend? Nice to have you in here. Always nice to welcome you. Overland Drams is saying a quick shout out to a stateside indie bottler for folks to watch for. Lost Lantern. Chuck. We've got a bottle of Lost Lantern here that's been I don't know where it is. It's lying about here. Indie bottler, you're absolutely right, but it's 70% ABV and it's paint stripper. It was we ended up using it as a kind of drinks challenge game on the Glasgow Whisky Festival weekend. See how long we could hold it in the palate. It was a silly game to play. It completely ruined the palate of a lot of people playing the game. I need more exposure to Lost Lantern. But it's nice that the concept of an independent bottler is starting to break through a wee bit more in North America as well. I know that in the past it's been a difficult concept to explain. So it's good for trailblazers like people like Lost Lantern to take that concept forward. Sometimes they can't win them all, says Chuck. Absolutely. Absolutely, buddy. It's the only chance, only window I've had to see into what they're doing as well. I can't even remember. It was a Missouri straight bourbon from memory. I can't remember. It's a wee bit out of reach. But aye, this is a decent, solid, strong representation of the spirit that's actually made at Aberfeldy, where we don't get a lot. Even their 21-year-old, once upon a time, I invested in a 21-year-old Aberfeldy, and I loved it, but it always felt like there was lots missing. It was difficult. It was a difficult dram to sip in contrast with other things, because the 21-year-old, you had all of this kind of really almost glimpses of the flavour that should be concentrated at that age. But it was diluted and a little bit too thin for me. You can't say that about this, even at 48.5. This isn't particularly thick or oily, but there's body to it. It's a wee bit oily, actually. And at 48.5, it's preserved. No need to chill filter. No need when it's not overly diluted. Harrow is saying, guess I now have that Deanston in my glass. So you went away, Harrow, and managed to pick that 10-year-old Bordeaux. Yes, it was one of the wine matured whiskies that made me realise that sometimes it can be just a fruit blast. Kyle Taylor is saying, love the Lost Lantern stuff. Did a full tasting up in Vermont. They have an amazing Boulder cask spirits, French brandy finish. Some of their stuff is young, but give them a second chance. Thank you, Kyle. It's nice of you to be in here to add a little bit of tempering of my kind of inexperience of Lost Lantern. Let's move on to the next distillery then. So we've managed to talk about Auchentoshan, managed to talk about Aberfeldy. I kind of want to keep it quite neat tonight, as I've said. So I've got potentially 5 drams to talk about, but I think we'll cover 4. Because the next one I'm going to talk about, I want to dwell upon because of how much I love the distillery. I love the whiskey. And we need to talk about the fact that a distillery can't always bring wonderful stuff all the time, even when they just try and do their very, very best thing. There's going to be flavour drift over years. There's going to be vintage effect, right? Some years are better than others. There's going to be different dynamics driving the development of that malt over the years based upon how much cask investment there was, what the shift pattern was like. I know you're thinking that's ridiculous, but lots of the fermentation structures around distilleries around the UK don't really follow what's best for the malt often. They follow what's good for the malt, but fits best to a shift pattern. So you'll see the short distillations happening through the week, and then you'll see the long fermentations happening over the weekend. Things like that. But that can change. As capacity drives up and extra shifts come on, the fermentation times can change. They often shrink. And as capacity falls off a little bit, the fermentation times can extend. So over the years, you tend to find this, as an enthusiast, this kind of sinusoidal experience. And it's not even reliable to the point where you can go, oh, 1998 was a great vintage, 2004 was a great vintage. It's just a kind of thing that you start to fall down a rabbit hole with a distillery, and you build up a picture of vintages and zones and styles. So for me, the distillery I'm going to talk about now, mid-90s, from bourbon refill hogsheads, ex-sherry hogsheads, refill sherry butts, light touch casks from the mid-90s is glorious. Heavily sherried stuff from the mid-90s I avoid. It can be a little bit sulfur driven, a little bit kind of matchstick and firework and that type of thing. So stay away from that. Go for the kind of lighter touch casks. And generally speaking, try and get the palest liquid you can get a hold of at the longest age you can get a hold of. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about my fetish distillery. One of my fetish distilleries, the Highland Distillery of Clynelish. I'm still a big fan of this branding, I have to be honest. Yeah, I know it's changed ever so slightly over the years. But this is Clynelish's 14-year-old. The branding that you have might be a wee bit different from this one. I'm close to the bottom of this. There's always one or two bottles of Clynelish 14 on the shelf. This is the official bottling from Diageo. And over the years, this 14-year-old official bottling at 46% ABV, but highly likely to be chill filtered despite that ABV, has been resplendent, and then flat, and then pretty good, and then resplendent, and it's just the nature of the beast, right? It's malt whiskey. It's an organic product made from grain, and it's matured inside an organic vessel made of wood. And all of the dynamics I've mentioned about the wax and wane of Scotch whisky over the years, and other things like the yeast they're using or the specific barley. There's so many things over the years that can push us towards a scenario where we can detect as enthusiasts really quite significant discrepancies in flavour drift over the years. But generally speaking, I mean, I've sipped young Clynelish at 7, 8, 9 years old and found it to be wonderful. And I've sipped 25-year-old Clynelish and found it to be wanting and things. And it's difficult to try before you buy, but it doesn't matter to me because I find that my experiences with the distillery means that it's fascinating. And when you find a good one, for me personally speaking, it completely reinforces why I enjoy Scotch malt whiskey so much. It can genuinely be life affirming. And when, even if it's just a 10 or 20 or 30% hit rate, you chase it. That's what Clynelish is for me. This particular bottle, I'd say, is a good one. This particular batch. The one I had before this was good. The one I had before that took me a long time to get through. It was far too sweet, far too toffee caramel, very, very bourbon cask driven. Too much first fill bourbon potentially, something odd, something a bit too sweet about it. These last couple of ones have had a little bit more of the kind of nice, let's try not to use waxy, but we certainly look for wax in our Clynelish, we really do. But a wee bit of a kind of floral spritz about it as well, a little bit of hayfield, a little bit of the malt character, maybe even sometimes leaning a wee bit into that kind of mulchy nature that can marry up really quite nicely with that waxiness. And then you get this lovely kind of clean fruit, some tropicality coming through, and a nice kind of searing precision of a kind of acidic edge as well. And when that all happens, and that can genuinely happen out of the official 14 at times, when it all happens together, Clynelish can just sing. And then you have this lovely oily body, this waxy nature that we talk about. It's just good. Clynelish can be very, very close to the pinnacle of Scotch whisky. For me personally speaking, my thing. However, it can be tricky to get a hold of from independent bottlers. You often find that it's been in a sherry cask or something. I don't think Clynelish shines particularly well in a sherry cask, just my personal opinion. It will be a good whisky, but it's not likely to be a brilliant Clynelish, in my opinion. And often it's not allowed to be sold as Clynelish. So you often find pictures of cats on there, or you find a secret Highland distillery or a distillery in Sutherland and all of these kind of things. A lot of kind of hiding behind that kind of brand protectionism that can happen. Whiskey Weekend Drama saying almost empty, bought a year back from a whiskey swap group. Jimmy Legacy saying plain white, off-white label with simple text. It's a proper label. I absolutely agree. Exact same. I agree fully. Chris Pollack is saying, hasn't there been a release without the typical waxiness? No, there have been lots of releases, Chris, absolutely, without that typical waxiness. And over the years, you know, you can, I'm going to show you a picture. I'm not going to tell you where this distillery is, because I took this picture surreptitiously. I shouldn't have probably taken the picture, but nevertheless, I've got this picture here. But it is believed that the waxiness manifests in some of the liquid receiver tanks, some of the spirit receiver tanks, faint receivers, spirit receivers, and things like that. And over time, you can get this kind of really quite ugly, gross kind of build-up in the receiver tanks. That's all of these kind of, I want to say waxy, but it's not waxy. It's like gloop. This build-up in these systems. When they were through maintenance and upgrades and things at distilleries like Clynelish in the past, they would take the opportunity to clear out these places, to clear out the pipes and the receiver tanks and get rid of all this gunk. What they found was they significantly impacted the character of the spirit after they had done that, and now they are much, much more careful about how they treat these things that affect the flavour and character so much. So I'm going to show you this picture and hope that it focuses. This is an undisclosed spirit receiver tank somewhere in Scotland, and all that black stuff inside is exactly the gunk that I'm speaking about. And it's believed in the case of Clynelish that such a thing could be the thing that is encouraging that waxy character that we've come to love so much. So when we talk about wax, do we talk about an aroma? Do we talk about a flavour, or do we talk about a texture? To which I answer yes. It can be all of those things. The aroma for me can be like white candle wax. You scratch a white candle, you get that aroma. A box of Crayola crayons, that type of thing. The flavour for me can be a waxy flavour. It can literally be like you're licking or tasting or enjoying some kind of waxy edge or character to the flavour. But more than anything, I think it manifests as a texture, as a mouthfeel. You know, you can lick it off your teeth. You can really enjoy that kind of almost cool sensation, this waxy body. Your mileage may vary. Anyway, Clynelish is regularly available from independent bottlers, but they don't always call it Clynelish. They have to kind of hide the branding or whatever. I'm going to hold up something called Secret Highland 2011 from a bourbon hogshead. Okay, I'm interested in the specs already, but I think there's a good chance that this release from Little Brown Dog at 56.5% ABV and 14 years old, specifically reaching for this because I feel like despite the higher ABV, we've got quite a close comparison with the official bottling when it comes to age statement. But this was not an expensive bottle of whiskey to pick up. We are benefiting out of the fact that they can't declare what the whiskey is. So we're getting it a wee bit cheaper because there's less kind of provenance kudos, less chasing when we don't see that it's Clynelish. It's my personal opinion that this could be Clynelish. Now, there's a what 3 words on this bottle, and I searched the what 3 words, and it took me to Alaska. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's tongue-in-cheek or just a joke, whether I'd made a mistake. But the what 3 words on this is overheard trial rivals. And when I plugged that in, it took me to Alaska. So I think that there has been a misprint in one of these words here. So I think I was playing around with overheard trail rivals, rival. I tried a few different things and it didn't seem to make any sense. It didn't help me get any closer to working out where the whiskey's from. Regardless, we have a Highland 14-year-old at 56.5% ABV from a bourbon hogshead, and we think that it might be Clynelish. So I'm going to nose and play with this and see if I can be drawn anywhere closer to Sutherland through this secret Highland. This is a bit more despite being a bourbon hogsheads. I don't know if it's first fill. 14 years. This is nosing like quite active second fill or potentially first fill hoggies, quite forward. So I'm getting coconut here, clean desiccated coconut, and I'm getting a kind of toffee apple cracked toffee, that kind of hard toffee. I'm looking for wax. It's not prevalent to me. It's not obvious. That doesn't always appear on the nose. And there is it's not pure and precise and clean. There's a slightly autumnal edge to things, like a mulch, like a leaf mulch. It's not, I wouldn't go as far as to say funk. It's a wee bit like wet tobacco, maybe. No, let's go with kind of an outdoor kind of leaf mulch type thing. So if you ever kicked leaves and you get that kind of earthy thing, almost like a kind of slight, it's not, I don't want to say mushroom because it's not close to mushroom, and it's not kind of that, but it's, I think you know the smell I'm speaking about. Damp days. It's brown russet rust. This is autumnal whiskey on the nose. Good fruits here. Citrus. Maybe a wee bit of orchard, but mostly leaning on citrus and quite sweet. I think the citrus is maybe like satsumas and things like that, but we're leaning towards active, slightly active bourbon. Cheers, everyone. Really looking for my nose and my palate to be back to, it's never going to be exemplary. I don't have the best, but back to where it normally is. Quite a nice ABV at the finish there, a lot of grip on the palate, lots of things, but the arrival and the development was a little bit muddy, a little bit together. This needs time. This needs a bit of time in the glass. Looking for wax. If it's there, it's not, it doesn't lead with a waxiness. It's a tasty whiskey. It's a very tasty whiskey. Starting to separate a little bit now. Starting to easier to interrogate it a bit. Quite high ABV. This will benefit from a bit of time, some water, a wee teaspoon in this. Open it up a little bit. Fruit's gone a little bit more kind of tart, citrusy now. A wee bit of kind of orange pith or grapefruit. Juicy. This is really good. Kind of starts to just develop and move quite quickly. You can see probably 3 or 4 sips in already. Really moreish. It's that juiciness that's bringing me back in. A little bit of acidity there now coming from that citrus. Putting the glass on its side. I wish you could perhaps you do this too. Put the Glencairn on its side and roll it round so it coats the glass quite nicely. A little bit of toffee butterscotch thing again. I kind of lost that coconut thing. I think I'm not getting, there's not bold, clean wax character from this, but there is a lot of fruit and there's a lot of juiciness to it. And this is good, and it's getting better and better and better sip by sip. So there's a nice kind of something cutting through as well, like a sharp, sour kind of peak right in the center there, like a citrus spritz, acidity. So there's complexity here. 56.5% ABV, you're going to want to let it breathe. You're going to want to not do what I'm doing just now. First impressions from a neck pour. This is a good whiskey. I wish I could remember what I paid for this. I think it was only about 70 quid. I think it was only about 70 quid. And that's exceptional. Hold on a second. Apologies. Yeah, this is still available for 70, 785 and 75 and prices of that. So that's bloody good. That's bloody good for this spec of whiskey. I don't care that we don't know what it is. I don't care that we're kind of left to guess or left to rely on hints and clues from the producer, the independent bottler, to try and lead us to where it might be. I think that's a shame, because when a whiskey is as good as this, it should be able to express where it was made. This is a positive advertisement for anybody trying to build a brand or a reputation for where whiskey is made. And I think it's a shame when it's hidden. Read the Dramface article today, which is very, very, very close to the theme that we're covering tonight. Talking about that very concept. This is nice. This is so nice. Unless the next whiskey I pour blows my face off, when I crawl upstairs to bed tonight, take a wee dram upstairs with me to wind down, probably watching clips of Scotland from Tuesday night on the phone. I can't get enough of it. Sorry. And wind down. This is going to be the dram I take upstairs. I can't be 100% sure and get right behind this and say, yeah, this is very, very high. This is obviously Clynelish, very typical Clynelish. It's in that profile. It's definitely there. In the Venn diagram of Scotch whiskey, there's a kind of clearly, but it's objectively fabulous. Drinking, engaging Scotch malt whiskey with so much more to offer than I'm getting out of this neck pour. It's already betraying the complexity that could potentially come from this, with a wee bit of time and a wee bit of air. Wee bit of eucalyptus, almost like a kind of a lemon and menthol. Just what I need to help clear my palate and my sinuses a wee bit, I think. I'm going to finish this off. I've not finished any of the drams I've poured tonight. The Welcome Dram, the Auchentoshan, the Aberfeldy. I'm just leaving them in the glass, but this Clynelish is getting this thing that could potentially be Clynelish. It's nonsense. This is getting finished. I've got a reason to buy a gift very soon. Now I need to choose what I'm going to buy someone, and I know it's going to be a bottle of whiskey. I think I found it. I think it's going to be this one. So dryness. The finish is quite dry on the finish. I love that. I love a dry finish on a whiskey. I love the Moorish character of it. That's why I've got through that glass so easily. There's a complexity here. There's a kind of journey as it takes you on. I know it arrived a bit muddy on the first pass. My fault, neck pour. But it's kind of the arrival to the development to the finish. Quite a long finish. Still here. I'm still picking up things from it. For that price, that's incredible. Very good. Lowlander is saying, sorry, I've just lost it. Scroll back up. Sorry. I'll try and find you again, Lowlander. The paraffin candles got their P45s at Clynelish and started up again at Glenelgin. Glenelgin, occasionally, yes. Deanston, Dulhuan, Glenfiddich. Especially if you can leave a whiskey in a refill or hoggy cask for long enough, it will develop a tropicality. It will develop a very specific profile that becomes very addictive and enjoyable, and it will often develop a waxy quality. Waxiness is not the preserve of Clynelish. Clynelish isn't the only place that can build up residue or gunk in the receivers. So waxiness can appear elsewhere as well. And it's interesting that, to consider how Clynelish developed this reputation of waxiness. And I think it's just because of the examples that were available over time, the likes of Serge and people like that reviewing and discovering this waxy quality in the whiskies and talking about it and things. So now that when we pick up Clynelish, we're looking for that. But we know that there are other distilleries out there capable of displaying it very, very well. Thanks, Arnie. And Londer, there it is, the comment there. Overhead Trials Rivals takes you to Clynelish. I must have been typing it in wrong. So there you go. Thank you, Lolander. There's always somebody in there to pitch in. Danny Hebbington is saying, I thought it was only me. The algorithm is all Scotland goals from Tuesday. We love it. We just can't get enough of it, Danny. Just soak it. It's only taken 28 years, right? 27 years, 30 years. We just need to wallow. It's brilliant. It's just a brilliant time to be Scottish. Just that little pocket of time where you can just... So good. Cat faces are on the label of that little brown dog. Yes, you can see it's covered in dogs. I want you to notice that it's covered in little brown dogs. But in the background, if you look at that orange label there, you might just pick up lots and lots and lots of wee cat eyes and cat noses. So there are lots of hints, but isn't that silly? Matt, that's Matt Fullick. Good to see you, Matt. Cat faces. Thank you very much for pointing it out. Grain of Malt, James is in. You don't have to buy me gifts, Aquaviti, wink wink. And Brian Storm is saying, loving this, hosting a tasting on Saturday that is indie bottlings, reinforces everything I think about them. Massive fan. Brian Storm, I wish you the very best of luck with your tasting this weekend. I bet you it's going to be good fun. I have an SNWS Balmenic, says Taylor actually. He's saying, literally entitled Bubblegum Church Candles. So waxy in every sense. Smell, taste, feeling. Phenomenal. And isn't it amazing that once somebody tells you that waxy character is desirable, you're like, ooh, and you suddenly... I think it needs more than just a pure kind of Crayola crayon white candle, church candle waxiness. I think it's lovely when it comes along with a little bit of nice fruit, whether it's a grape or a tropical or a melon fruit, whatever it may be, some clean. But I also love it when there's a bit of dryness, acidity, a little bit of bitterness in there as well. And sometimes there's a farmy quality to it, especially if it's older. And all of it can kind of just flash and flicker with this lovely kind of textured, kind of clean... sometimes it's difficult to describe it. But when you get it, it can be a little bit like white chocolate, but that's not like it's tasting like white chocolate. You don't taste white chocolate. It's not that thing, but the texture and the sensation is a little bit like what white chocolate can deliver. That's just another way for me to try and articulate that kind of waxiness, that waxy quality. Green Malt is saying, not an indie, but picked up a handful at Clynelish Distillery despite the price. But glad I did. Batch 9, phenomenal. Honestly, 12-year-old first fill bourbon, 53% and delicious. We don't want cheap whiskey though, James, right? So what we're talking about there, you overpaid, potentially overpaid, but you've had so much impact from the quality of that cask selection that it makes you feel like it was good value. That's the point of this session tonight. Somehow, independent bottlers are able to do that better than the official source. You've been fortunate with your distillery exclusive there that they have picked a potentially good example of Clynelish. You've paid over the odds and yet come away thinking, I got good value there. And if I had the ability to buy it again, I would probably buy it again, right? We are not after cheap whiskey. We're after good whiskey. And often, when we realise how life-affirming it is, we're willing to pay a wee bit more for it. And I think that that's the problem with this short-termist. Stack it high, sell it cheap, and make malt whiskey become a drink. Ian Bruce is saying, if I had the money and time, I would love to take a trip north to North America and do a distillery tour, catch the World Cup game, and share some whiskies with barflies. I don't doubt for a second there's a very, very high chance that that is going to happen. All right, 1 hour 44, and let's get on to our last dram of the night. Jura was the top of the poll, according to the consensus of the community. If it was the Aquavitae poll, it wouldn't be Jura. It would be top of the poll. It would be another distillery owned by actually Beam Suntory. Similar to Auchentoshan that we've already covered tonight. I don't want to pick on one producer. I need to get this Clynelish glass out of the way. I was almost going to pour into that. I'll get a clean glass. I don't want to pick on one producer or one kind of owner, but the top two for me is Auchentoshan, is already covered tonight. I want to love it. I want to love Auchentoshan. And I think when I catch a pure example of Auchentoshan, I do fall in love with it. But I can't do that through the official bottles. And the other one that I feel so heartbroken about in the exact same vein is Bowmore on Islay. Don't skip Bowmore when you go to Islay. Visit Bowmore. Don't expect to spend any money in the shop, certainly not in official bottlings. But if you premiumize your tour, if you get to taste some of the examples that they're actually maturing there, that's not been footered with, messed around with, otherwise diluted, cut, decapitated, over-engineered, messed up, just fouled. Take the tour and you can taste what they're actually making there. If you do see Bowmore, especially when it's naturally presented and it looks like a pure example from an indie, please try and pick it up. It's a rare thing. It doesn't happen often, but it does from time to time. I'm going to remind myself, I've still got this on the shelf. Look how much has come out of this bottle now. I think it's at least a year since I had cause to open this bottle. You might remember that this was when I was exploring all the top 10 best-selling malt whiskies in Scotland. And for that exercise, I bought this 40% 12-year-old Bowmore, and I poured a dram out of it, and I suspect, look at that, I haven't gone back. Let's take a wee teaspoon, just to remind ourselves why I've not gone back to this bottle in all that time. I'm only going to pour this much because I have a very strong memory of what this tastes like. Smells good. Smells a little bit taking me into kind of rich, sweet toffee caramel and stuff, but there's lots of dried fruit spice in here as well. It immediately holds up flashcards telling me I'm expecting some sherry experience here. The nose is not the problem. It's a little bit muted. A bit of berry and cherry. Oak spice, polish, wood polish, wood, that kind of thing. A bit of linseed. So there's lots coming out of this glass. 40% ABV is a good nosing strength. No getting away from that. It's actually quite encouraging. There's a lot of green note in the background, like a green herbal thing. And another night I might want to dial in a wee bit further, but let's just go with something green. Let's have a wee sip. 12-year-old official 40% Bowmore. Better than I anticipated. And that's about as positive I can say. The first thing that strikes me is the thin delivery. Very thin. Very thin. And the finish. So I have this thing here. This ugly, horrible thing. And it's been upright for a long time. Can you see? But you can see clearly there's this divide right down here. and it's stained heavily because sometimes it's been stored on its side. But what I want to tell you is that whether you look here, or over here, the bottle that this is in is clear glass. This is not brown glass. You can see that it's clear if you look at the bottom there. This is clear glass. This has been completely stained. And it's caramel colouring that does that. And if I turn that on its side, it's going to take forever to start to kind of fall down on its side. I once stuck a cocktail stick in this and tasted it, and I never ever want to do that again. Acrid is the best way that I can describe it. So what that has done is it's sensitized me to something that happens to me when I sip a whiskey like this. On the finish, on the back end, you get this flash of an acrid note. One more sip. Smooth, soft, slightly spiced, slightly gentle, slightly sweet. Develops quickly to this bitterness. This is like one of those fireworks that you take out in the back garden and you light, and it starts to fizz and pop and all the promise, and it goes and it just nothing comes of it. I'm being cruel to a distillery that I adore. I'm being cruel to a malt that I actively seek, that I can't afford anymore, I can't find, and I certainly am not going to be catered for by the official Auchentoshan. There are exceptions over the years. The Fashil releases have occasionally been exemplary. I've got a 15-year-old Fashil over there from Firstville Bourbon that's really quite good. You remember that famously I love the tropicality and the salinity that comes from the Atlantic Sea Salt Vaults edition. There are Bowmores, official Bowmores, that have managed to sate my desire to connect with Bowmore. But generally speaking, the non-age statement entry level, the 12-year-old, the 15-year-old, the 18-year-old, I just don't touch. Footered, engineered, overcooked, fussed with, and yet diluted and flat, and even the cheap stuff is too expensive for what? I want to keep it positive. I want to keep it positive. We're not talking about the whiskey that Bowmore makes. We're not talking about the whiskey that Bowmore matures. We're talking about the whiskey that's sold, the whiskey that's made and developed from that mature stock. So they take something that has the potential to be epic and they render it piss poor. And I think it's a crying shame. I think it's horrendous. We've got one of the most legendary distilleries on our shores, and somehow, somewhere, they're just putting it out as not even a pale imitation of what it could be, but a cynical, dysmorphic misrepresentation of what it actually is. Anyway, I am going to open something, and it's an independently bottled Bowmore that I have not tried. I might end up sharing with you tonight that this is every bit as bland or as poor as the one that I've just poured. I don't like the taste on my palate right now. I have to be honest with you. It's not enjoyable. There's that acrid edge to it. There's a bitterness. There's something that would put me off whiskey in a very, very general sense. I'm speaking about me specifically. I know it's me, but that's what I'm tasting right now. I'm hoping that this wee bottle can help me. This is an independent Bowmore. It's a rare thing because it actually says Bowmore on the label. I've been sipping a 12-year-old official bottling, but this one's only 7 years old, and it's remarkably paler in colour. Let's hold the two up together so we can see the difference in colour, and that's nothing to do with age. I don't know if the camera is going to show the colour. I can clearly see the colour here. We've got some white wine on this one, and we've got a kind of much more kind of strong tea colour on the Bowmore. And this 7-year-old Bowmore from Living Souls, I should remember what I pay for these things. as I kind of accumulate for... Let's see if we can bring it up. I found it. I just need the price. 60 quid. 7-year-old Bowmore. Good Spirits Company. £60. Fantastic. So, for a 12-year-old Bowmore, you're probably going to be able to pick that up for 40 quid. A lot cheaper. So this 60-year-old, only 7 years old, sorry, this 7-year-old, 50% ABV, at 60 quid is going to have a lot to live up to, right? Not going to get a glug. Oh yeah, a wee glug. But immediately I'm encouraged by the colour. It's really nice. Second fill bourbon. It's really nice colour. Distilled at Bowmore Distillery. It's fantastic that they can put that on the label. 7 years old. Neck pour. This is alive. Whereas the Bowmore was accessible, you could get your nose in the glass. It's higher ABV, but we've got a field of kind of florality, floral. We've got green herbs even. We've got light vanilla, very kind of floral vanilla. Pale kind of, not toffee, maybe like a tablet type sweet thing. Floral is just so, but sweet floral, fruity floral, grapes, white grapes. It's not smoke, it's like an earthy warmth. It's like a turf. It's like a fire that's been doused. I hope I'm making sense. This is whiskey. It's incredible, and I don't know if I could go back 20 years to the Roy who stepped into whiskey 20 years ago. What could I say to myself to reassure myself that this, if you invest in this is where you're going to be inspired and triggered and excited about the potential of whiskey. I've not sipped this thing yet, and already I'm like, this is literally leaping from the glass. 7 years old. Let's have a wee sip. I'm genuinely thrilled. I'm already invested in this thing. A little bit herbal. A green note, definitely. I don't know what we're talking. Are we sage? Are we tarragon? I don't know, but there's a green thing here. Sweet. Lots of floral element. There's really kind of the sweet thing, a sweet thing, It's like a brown sugar. It's like a tablet. Acidity as well. Great on the finish. This is only 7 years old. There's no way you're going to pour this for anyone and they're going to pick up and say, oh, this is young, 7 years old. Nope. People are going to be in 10, 12, maybe even early teens in this one. Dry on the finish. Just immediately want to go back in again. We don't want cheap whiskey. We are not the wider whiskey market. We are not everyone. The wider whiskey market right now probably wants a lot of cheap whiskey. Malt whiskey doesn't want to be cheap. Malt whiskey struggles to be cheap. It struggles to be diluted. We've covered it over and over and over again tonight in another vPubs. But this is going to change your relationship with alcohol. This is the type of thing you pour a glass, you take it to the sofa, and you swim in flavour for as long as the glass can survive. Every sip is going to command your attention. There's an acidity here, a dryness, a smoke on the finish. It's so soft, so distant. It's like a snuffed candle, or it's, like I say, a fire that's out. Sorry, I'm distracted from making my point. We don't want cheap whiskey. As enthusiasts, we want flavour-driven things. This was good on the nose, exciting on the nose. It delivers on the palate. For 60 quid, I will never go near an official Bowmore ever again when I can get this for 60 quid. This will last. This will deliver much more engagement. I don't want a drink. I want an experience. I wish I could share this with all of you. I wish I could share that Clynelish. I wish I could share the purity of the Aberfeldy, and I wish I could share the shapes and the funkiness of that Auchentoshan. Because I think every single one of them are not what you or anyone understands from the official bottlings. And I'm not just speaking about it's clearly a measurable step up. It's double or triple the experience. It's not even the same sport. It's just completely. This is pure, concentrated pleasure, complexity, depth, texture, weight, body, shape, everything. So many of the official bottlings that exist today, as cheap as they can be, as accessible, as flat, and as easy as they can be, as smooth as they can be. I don't think that's what malt whiskey should ever be. Malt whiskey talks to us. It manifests its mood in ways that's difficult to explain and sound sane. If you dilute whiskey, it's going to cloud. It's not happy. It's going to, if you want to sell more whiskey based on the messages that you've built up over previous decades, you're going to want to make it dark. Not all malt whiskey is dark. When you give it time, when you come into a conversation scenario with whiskey and understand it and invest in it and listen to it, it doesn't want to be footered with. It doesn't want to. This. £60. I should have bought 2 of those. So I've now got something competing with the Clynelish for that gift I talked about. I have to be honest, one small caveat with this. If I was sitting this, and it's based on my sinuses and things, sitting here tonight, I don't know if I could sit here and say, no, this is Bowmore. Sometimes I'm looking for a little bit of a kind of basil. Oh, I did get a wee green kind of herby note thing on this. But there's something that often gives up Bowmore to me, typical Bowmore. And I'm not getting that, but I'm getting a fantastic, really, really good whiskey. I don't think I got Clynelish on the Clynelish either. So much of it is to do with my condition, my general health right now, probably. But despite my general health right now, these whiskies are, I want to just sit on the sofa and watch clips of Scotland's goals on replay and the crowd's reaction and the emotion, the outpouring of emotion and stuff. And these are the whiskies I want to sit while I do that thing and just enjoy what it is to be alive. I drink for the sake of drinking, to get to wherever alcohol takes you, wherever ethanol takes you. It's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the flavour, the engagement, the kind of eye-popping, the thing that fires all the synapses, the thing that makes you just stare at the glass and go, what is happening? Indie bottlers know this. Indie bottlers bring this. Much more, in my experience, than so many official bottlings do. I didn't want to do a bottom worst distilleries list. I think that's terrible. I think it's cynical. I think it's ugly. I think it needs context, it needs explanation, and it needs justification. But listing the examples of where independent bottlers easily, without any effort whatsoever, are able to demonstrate the whiskey that's made at the distilleries much more than the official bottlings, that's a list I can share. Not my list. It's not my top 10, my top 12. It's the communities. There's over 200 of you. Small sample, but I think if you built that out, if you built that up to 2,000 to more, I think you would see a similar kind of scale and shape of that chart I shared with you earlier tonight. We're not owners of whiskey. We're not blenders or makers of whiskey. We're not consumers. We're lovers of whiskey. We're guardians of whiskey. And loving something and being a guardian of something is a much longer term investment than it is to just have and have had. And I think that there's far too much things happening in whiskey right now, not just in Scotch and whiskey generally, that the short-term attitude is prevailing. And I think we need to fight against it. And even although that we're a smaller group and we're a sliver of the example of the whiskey drinking, whiskey buying community, everything starts and ends with education. We want to understand our food and the provenance and where it's come from. We want to understand why things taste and smell and do as they do. And whiskey is very much part of that, arguably much more. It's like a concentrated example of that. We're all part of it. We're all enjoying it. We don't want cheap. We don't want drink. We're not after drunk. We want value. We want integrity. And we want flavour. The things that reinforce all the things that we love about being alive. When it's doctored, engineered, footered, flattened, made smooth. By the way, smooth is a perfectly acceptable descriptor. If what you taste and what you know is smooth, please use that word. Don't let anybody take vocabulary away from you. But in the example, in the context I'm using it tonight, it's in a derogatory, negative way. And it's very deliberate. It's not what malt whiskey wants to be, and it's not what I want malt whiskey to be. Sorry to drop into a wee bit of a rant there. Lowlander is saying my credit card bill wants cheap whiskey. I know. Depends on what you call cheap, says Petehead. Cheap doesn't mean per definition little money, but merely great value for money. And then I love cheap whiskey. I hope that that's what I'm getting across, Frank. Jimmy Legacy saying, I've had so little success here explaining the difference between drinking and experience, and I'm going to have to try harder. Jimmy, I hope I can help you. That's what my whole existence is about. Mike at Inverurie Whiskey Shop, good to see you, Mike. Value for money is key, whether your budget is £50 or £5,000. This is a good way to sum it up. There is literally, I think it's possible, I suppose, to get value at £5,000. That's not the realm that I live in. But somebody out there could potentially do such a thing. Danny Hebington is saying, my wife thinks whiskey is cheap, so don't shout about those prices too loud, mate. It's one of the wonderful things of doing what I do. I don't need to tell fibs to my wife anymore. Daisy is an evening Roy Aquaviti and Barflies. Hope everyone's keeping well. On theme tonight with a delicious Whiskey Doris. Milton Duff. Whiskey Doris is a continental independent bottler. I only really get to connect with them, I suppose, when I'm out in Limburg and things. Glad you're on theme and glad you're enjoying it, Daisy. Armin Van Norman is saying, drams on the couch watching the drama of World Cup qualification sounds ideal. Friday night sorted. I'll be there with you. I think I want to lock the front door and just spend like a weekend watching crowd reactions and replays and goals scored to different theme songs. And I've been driving a lot this week. I was driving for a project and I put the radio on just to kind of, and the radio was just constantly apologising for all the football content, and it needs to stop. We need to stop apologising for this. If people aren't interested in the football content and things, there's lots of other distractions that they can get involved in. But the people that want to make the most of this very, very rare moment as a Scotland fan, we need to just scoop it up. We need to enjoy it. And I think that we're capable of doing it in a very, very humble, very, very aware way. It's just fabulous. It's fabulous. Harrow's saying the Tour of Egg from Living Souls was also great. And bourbon matured at 51.5%. I saw that one and I was very tempted. And it's also still available and at a fantastic price as well, 50, 55 quid, something like that. Fighting's for the young, says Jimmy Legg. Guarding is for the experienced. I like that. I like it, Jimmy. Ian Bruce is saying, Roy, I don't think you're bashing the distillery. I don't think you're bashing the distilleries, but presenting the evidence of how a good spirit can be when nurtured by hands that see the potential of a liquid. No need to fake bake. Thank you, Ian. I'm glad you get the overall concept point. Doodle Dram Arnie saying that Ben React from Rachel and Georgia I poured at the beginning of this vPub is still in my glass. So glad it's not smooth, but highly entertaining for literally hours. Thank you, Arnie. Thank you, buddy. I am very, very happy with every single dram I poured tonight, and that wasn't guaranteed. But because every single independent bottling relies heavily on the reputation of what came before, there's a good chance that it's going to be of a very, very high grade, a high minimum quality floor. And I think that's absolutely true tonight. The Auchentoshan, interesting. The Equinox and Solstice Aberfeldy, pure. The Clynelish, complex. And the Bowmore, even at 7 years old, let me see. Resplendent. An independent bottler at 7 years old is representing the Islay distillery better than the majority of all. In fact, I'll go further than that. Any accessible, any affordable official Bowmores that I can afford, this £60 7-year-old is doing it better. Now, it's obviously a very, very small batch. Second fill bourbon barrels, perfect. 7 years old. That the liquid can be this good at 7 years old. Maybe some of the barrels are older, or something. It certainly tastes like that could be the case. But if this is 7 years old, this is what they're making, and yet the non-age statement, the 12-year-old comes out, and it's so. I've made my point. I'm not going to dwell anymore. Let's not turn it into Alice Tartan Army, though. Let's be humble. And lets the chips fall where they may. Danny, I agree with you. And this is the most amazing thing. We don't even care. Well, it'd be nice for us to get beyond the group stage, right? We don't care. We're at finals. And the first time since France, since 1998, since France 1998. We're just there to just enjoy it. And have a Stoughton summer. Danny, it's just that. The attitude, everything. Annabelle Plauta is in, and I don't know how long you've been celebrating being a member of the Barflies. Annabelle, thank you so much for supporting me for 2 months. I threw out Bowmore 15. Whoops. It's similar. The Neck Pour has just signed up to be an Aquaviti Barfly. Thank you so much, the Neck Pour. Wonderful to have you, and I feel like I know who you are, the Neck Pour. Falsgraf Klaus is celebrating being a member for 6 months, saying, Roy, the bottling is cruel to you and us. I wonder which bottling, I think official bottlings you may be talking about. And Jimmy Legg is saying, do you find that your palate and nose worsening with age? I'm afraid that mine is. You know, I think that there's an absolute, undeniable, unfortunate truth about that things like that fail with age. I'll put it to you, Jimmy. I could have not discovered whiskey and gone through my life just kind of consuming like I always did up until I discovered whiskey. Discovering whiskey at 35, probably as things start to degrade in my primary senses and things, it encouraged me to smell and to be much more mindful, to taste food, anything I was eating or drinking or breathing or living or in the remote environment of. And that can have been positive and negative too, right? But whiskey has taught me to be much more aware of my senses. And if they degrade over time, then that's fine. I suppose there's not much we can do about that degradation. It's just going to naturally happen. However, whiskey has taught me to be mindful of what I have while I have it. I hope, Jimmy, it's the same for you too. We're aware, and it makes us sad that it's getting worse over time. And yet we're happy that we discovered it before it disappeared. Everyone is saying, did you ask Jim McEwen about Bowmore versus Bruichladdich and why there is such a difference? I never did. I never did. Not that specific question, at least. Thank you for indulging me tonight. I've been going on for 2 hours, 14 minutes. It's incredible. I love it. I love hanging out with you guys, even when I'm a bit blocked up and a bit in need of a wee bit of rest to recover. I'm not quite there yet. But there's so much excitement. There's so much fun things happening. Next week, we're going to celebrate 8 years of the vPub. 8 years. Everyone that can get a hold of this, please join me. We're going to have a wee glass of this together. If I'm mindful enough, I'm going to set up a repository. And while we're live, you can upload pictures to that repository, and I'll try and pull up pictures and share them. Photos of people sipping the same dram together. If I've got space for an emoji for the barflies to share an emoji, specifically recalling the fact that we're all sipping the same whiskey at the same time, wherever we may be on the corner of this map, the things that the vPub has afforded us over the years, from you guys participating and hanging out with me, that's what I want to try and celebrate next week. There's a wee bit of work to do. I need to figure out how I'm going to structure things. Who's going to come in and raise a glass with me, what we're going to do. I have no fully formed idea how we're going to do it yet, but that's for the weekend to work out. I've been busy this week. Maybe you can join me next week. For those of you that joined me tonight, thank you so much. Please consider staying for the quiz at the end. It might be fun. I am trying to get on theme with the Scotland success this week, and I've tried to make a challenging quiz at the end for everyone that you have a very strong chance of navigating in order to get a 10 out of 10 tonight. I want to celebrate with as many of you as I possibly can. So those of you who are willing to stay for the quiz at the end, please do so. Alistair McPhail is tongue-in-cheek saying was there football this week? I guarantee you, Alistair, not only do I know that you know there was football this week, but you don't have much of a voice left. I think you were shouting at that TV. I think you had your T-shirt off, swinging it over your head. I think you threw things on the carpet and knocked things over and hugged people that you don't normally hug, and you shed tears. I know that you did. Pedro in Brazil is saying, I have to reach for another dram Aberfeldy, probably one of the Ardnamurchens. Fantastic. Whiskey Weekend Drama saying, I hope Gerwin will bring the bottle beforehand, but I don't think. But I'll get a photo later on. Oh, okay, Harrow, he's mulling back you a Glasgow. Only for the people that can get it, only for the people that have it. It's been out long enough now that I hope that tried to get it out early enough so that by the time we had the anniversary vPub, the majority of people could have a bottle. The bottle's been released in plentiful quantities in order for as many people to be able to celebrate together as possible. And Rory's drams, good to see you in, Rory. Thank you so much, buddy. Just in time for the quiz. First vPub in too long. Missing you, big guy, and hope things are going well over in Embra. All right, let's get the wheels on the quiz at the end, everyone. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight, 20th of November. What a week it's been. What a time to be alive. Whiskey, football, Scottishness, lots of other positivity in a world of negative soup, right? It's wonderful. Question 1. Good luck. Which of the following whiskey distilleries also makes a popular gin brand on site? Looking for a whiskey distillery that makes gin. A. Benriach. B. Benromac. C. Balmenic. Which of these whiskey distilleries also makes a famous and popular gin on site? Jimmy Legg has said Laddie, and then immediately, oops, yes, Bruichladdich is a B distillery, but it's not one of the options. Bruichladdich makes, of course, I'm trying to remember the name of their gin. My wife loves it. Can't remember. It's made in Ugly Betty, isn't it? The Lomond Still. Fair Walker is saying, you forget 1B. I don't know if I forget it. Which of the following whisky distilleries also makes a popular gin brand on site? Ben Romac, or Balmerac? The Botanist. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you so much. Pedro saying the Botanist. Thank you. It is the Botanist. There's a nice tropical side coming out of this Bowmore now. Guava, something like that. Something a little bit aromatic. Cantaloupe, Gallia melon, that type of thing. I want to say guava. When was the last time you tasted one of those? If you let it get too ripe, it starts to smell and taste of cat's piss. But while it's nice and sweet, it's delicious. Everyone's going for B on this one by the looks of it. A couple of people, Daisy included, suggesting Balmerac for C. But I can tell you that question one is often a multiple thing. Sometimes you get a freebie. All of them are correct and everyone goes home with one. Nobody goes home with a donut, a 0 on the quiz at the end. But if there's a banana skin there's a chance that one of them is wrong. And in this case, that's true. Benriach don't make a gin. But Benromac make Cowrun, I think is how you pronounce it. No, that's not true. Benromac make Red Door. Balmerac make Cowrun. Take a tour at Balmerac Distillery in Speyside, and they will give you a tour. But they'll talk about gin. I feel like you don't drink enough Benromac, says Jimmy Legg. I have probably between 8 and 12 different examples of Benromac on the shelf, Jimmy. But you still, the point stands, I probably don't enjoy enough of any. So much choice today, right? But Benromac is doing very, very good things, especially if the rumours are true about next year's upgrade to the ABV. Question 2, which of the following Diageo distilleries acts as a brand home for Bell's blended Scotch whisky? Apologies for not capitalising Diageo. They deserve at least that much. A, Cardew is the home for Bell's. B, Blair Athol is the home for Bell's. Or C, Glenkinchie is the home of Bell's. Questions start off quite easy, get harder. I'm hoping that we can all have a comfortable quiz tonight. Mikey Hazen, so good to see you, Mikey. How are you keeping? Papa Q's here as well. Fantastic. Daisy's participating in the quiz. So is Jimmy Jazz, still here. Gids, of course. Who could that be? That handle. So we've worked out tonight through Frank Peathead has suggested that if you click on your name or your icon, it takes you back to your page. You can change your handle so that I can understand who you are a bit better, because YouTube has gone a wee bit crazy. Dancing Midgie Photography is here, Glenn. So good to see you in, my friend. I hope you're keeping well. It's wonderful to have you for the quiz at the end. James Morgan's here. Ryan McCleve playing the quiz at the end as well. Gene Kelly too. Fantastic. Everybody going for B on this one. Kicking it out the park. Well done, Barflies. Of course it is. Blair Athol on the A9. And Pitlochry is the home of Bell's. Question 3. In which decade did Glenfarclas lose their in-house floor maltings? I'm going to give you the choice of 3 decades, and I want you to tell me which decade they lost their in-house maltings. A, they lost it in the 50s. B, they lost it in the 70s. Or C, they lost it in the 1990s. Jimmy Jazz is saying, great to have you with us. It's amazing to see that we remember these folk that have been around in the past. Mark Watt is back from his trips across to Asia and Japan for a rare occasion on the quiz with Kate. I hope I don't mess up tonight. Mark, I think I'm trying to just wallow in the glory of Scotland from Tuesday night. I want everybody to have a good chance of having a really strong score tonight, perhaps even a 10 out of 10. I hope there's an opportunity for lots of us to enjoy a 10 out of 10 tonight. There's still not an easy one, still a bit of a challenge involved. Guessing B on this, says Fairnight Walker. Ryan McCleve is going for 70s B. Rick Johnson also going for B. The majority of you absolutely spot on. The 50s, there were still quite a lot of some transition started to happen in the 50s, but generally speaking, it wasn't until the 60s, the late 60s into the 70s, that most of the distilleries started to give up and go for centralised maltings. I don't know of a single distillery that kept their floor maltings into the 90s that don't still have it today. So B was the answer to that question as we go into question 4. In 2009, the Campbelltown Malts Festival was launched. And it ends, that is, it butts up directly against another famous whisky festival. Which festival am I speaking about? A, of course, I'm talking about the Spirit of Speyside Festival. Or B, I'm talking about Isla's annual Fashiel. Or C, I'm talking about Edinburgh and the Fringe Whisky Festival. What does the Campbelltown Malts Festival butt up directly against? Spirit of Speyside, Fashiel, or the Fringe Whisky Festival? Really enjoying this Bowmore, I have to say. Objectively tasty, good whisky. Shocking that it's 7 years old. Sunday overlap next year, says Ryan McCleave. Oh, wow. What Whisky and Friends, says Mark Watt. We're looking at an overlap next year. Is that the day that some of us will be in Islay, some of us will be still in Campbelltown, others will be in the ferry crossing between the two potentially, because of course you've knocked it right out the park. I'm looking for B. Fashiel on Islay tends to follow on right after Campbelltown Malts at the end of May. Question 5 is always the picture question. I'm going to show you a scene, a distillery scene. This could have been taken any time in the last 40 years, right? We're looking at a mash tun here. See, shovel and a brush, but we're also looking at 2 stills on the right-hand side. Lots of painted pipework, a hopper in the background. Where are we? Are we A, in the Highlands, or are we B, on Islay, or are we C, in the Lowlands? Where are we? Will I go back to the picture so you can see the whole scene? Are we in the Highlands, Islay, or the Lowlands? Where are we in this scene? Ray Johnson is saying, I'm surprised the photo isn't a goal being scored. Probably one of the best still is probably McTominay's foot, clearly 8 feet up in the air. How on earth did such a thing happen? What a dour photo, says Kyle Taylor. I see what you did there. Stewie Baby's in. Good to see you, Stewie. How you keeping? Lassie Hjort Otsman is playing along at the end. Stevie is still in, playing along at the end. Fantastic. Wonderful to have your company at the quiz at the end. Of course, we are in, as spotted already by the majority of you, we're in the Highlands, specifically the Southern Highlands, and that is the very, very small mash tun of Edredar. Edredar in the Southern Highlands. Question 6. Which of these Ben distilleries has a white chimney stack as opposed to red? So there's a kind of collection of red chimney distilleries out there in the landscape, right? And a few of them, have to be honest, are Bens. But one of the Bens has a white chimney. Which is it? A, Ben Nevis. B, Ben Riach. C, Ben Romac. Ben Demon Hunter is in shouting Ben. Whiskey with Molly. Ben is obviously not participating tonight. He's away for an early bed for travel tomorrow. Willie Dollier is in. Good to see you, Willie. How you keeping, fella? Nice to have you in, hanging out with us. Jerry Miller is suggesting B. Gabriel Welding is in, saying B. Good to see you, Gabriel. The Nick Poor is saying, I'm guessing based on bottle colours. Pedro is going for B, though. Roy Overmeer from Norway is in. Good to see you, Roy. And Peter Box is in. Good to see you, Peter. Saying B along with Barry Coleman as well. Jesper Bach. Now, Jesper, I wonder if I know you's another name. Everyone needs to click on their name and go back and change their handle, so I've got a better chance of knowing who you are. Sugar Kitty, Jeff, good to see you, is in, also saying B, and I can tell you, you're all absolutely spot on. Ben Nevis and Ben Romack are both very much red chimney distilleries. So Ben Riach was the white chimney distillery we were looking at. Loads and loads and loads of you are going to be enjoying us. 6 out of 6. Let's keep it going. Let's go for it. We have an Edredauer number 2 today. Existing today, we have Edredauer 1 and Edredauer 2. In the past, though, we've had Glen Grant 1 and Glen Grant 2. We've also had Clynelish 1 and Clynelish 2. Glen Grant 2 became Caperdonic, of course. Clynelish 2 became Brora. It was the original distillery, but became known as 2 and then became Brora. But which distillery was Ben Riach originally the number 2 against? When it was founded back in 1898, Ben Riach was distillery 2 of which? A. Ben Riach was Glenlossie number 2. B. Ben Riach was Glenelgin number 2. Or C. Ben Riach was Longwarn number 2. I think Edredauer is the only example that we have today where we have a 1 and 2. Caperdonic, and it had to be called Caperdonic after the event, much like Brora had to be called Brora after the event because of regulations and differentiation of malts. Wonder if Edredauer will have the same issues. But that also happened with a distillery back in 1898. Was it Glenlossie number 2, Glenelgin number 2, or Longmore number 2? What was Ben Riach? You can still see it, but the road is closed, says Pedro. Following the crowd, says Rick Johnson, going for C. Must be due to location, says Petehead. Adrian H, good to see Adrian, is going for C as well. This question is good enough to be a Menno question, Aquavite. That's high praise. I miss Menno. I wonder if Menno would be available for next week. I wonder if he would be able to do an 8 years of the vPub next week quiz at the end. That would be good fun, I think. You're all absolutely spot on. Well done, everyone, whether you deduced this because of location, because of knowledge, because of the Malt Whiskey Yearbook, whatever the reason. But once upon a time, Longmorn was actually, John Duff famously founded Ben Riach and also went on to found Longmorn. And it was, once upon a time, for a very brief spell, known as Ben Riach number 2. Question 8. Broger Privat Brennerei, apologies for the pronunciation to any German-esque, Germanic language speakers. Broger Private Brennerei is a distillery making whiskey since 2008. In which country? Where is Broger Private Brennerei making whiskey? A, Germany. B, Austria. C, Switzerland. Gene Kelly saying, why make us all score 4 out of 10? Graffiti, right. Pedro's on a 7. Gene Kelly's on a 7. Fairnight Walker's on a 7. Gids, of course, 7. Ben Demon Hunter, 7. Rick Johnson is on a 7, along with Trippleberg. Trippleberg? I feel like I should recognise that handle. Martin M on a 7. Gabriel's on it, and Danny both on a 7. Papa Q, Whiskey and Wire Cheers. Tom, good to see you, Tom. Nick Poor on a 6. Oh no, you've slipped up somewhere. Big Jimmy Jazz on a 7. Jimmy Leg on a 7. Stu Baby, Royal Vermeer, Dancing Midgie, Lachlan McKenzie. Superb to see you, Lachlan. Randy Rice on a 7. Jerry on a 7 too. Guessing B, says Pedro, just because A would be too obvious. Miss Lachlan McKenzie saying B, going with the flow. Big Jimmy Jazz is laughing. I have 2 Brogers. You're a well-travelled whiskey guy, Jimmy, so that's why you have 2 Brogers, and you know fine well the Broger Private Brennerei is in Austria. Well done, everybody that answered B. Keeping it together. There's going to be a lot of people enjoying a 10 out of 10 tonight. I hope. Let's get it over the line. 2 more to go. Question 9. Which of these new wave distilleries will have 5-year-old malt in early 2026. I suspect this is where the attrition is going to kick in. We're looking at 3 new wave distilleries, but specifically I'm looking at the one that's going to be 5 years old, or at least a 5-year-old malt in the new year, in the fairly early new year, 2026. A, Dunfale in Speyside. B, the Cairn in Speyside. C, Jackton in the Lowlands. Dunfale, the Cairn, or Jackton? Which of those new wave distilleries is going to have new malt appearing? 5-year-old new malt appearing in 2026. So it's not just whiskey. It's not just 3 years. I'm speaking specifically about 5-year-old malt, and yet we still don't have any available. Dunfale, the Cairn, or Jackton? We will see some attrition with this one. Mike Molasses is saying, "Oh, I was so confident that I would know this. Just call me AI." Yeah, I know AI is bonkers how pleasing it tries to be, right? It's very easy to manipulate the answers you get from AI. It's ridiculous. Fundamentally flawed in lots of ways. Ben Demon Hunter is suggesting that it's B, along with James Morgan saying it's B, please. Well, Peterhead is suggesting, along with Rory's Dramsey and Bruce, Peter Box, that it's C. Papa Q is going for B. Fairnight Walker is saying B and C. Whiskey Montreal's Trauma is going for C. There's going to be attrition here, so let's get it over with. I can tell you that Dunfale and the Cairn are 2022 and 23 respectively, while, sorry, the other way around, Cairn is 2022, Dunfale is 2023, whilst Jackton has been going potentially in February next year, 2026, 5-year-old whiskey. Jackton, under the radar for so long, bit of a banana skin right at the end, a bit of attrition here. It's always going to get trickier towards the end, so that would have taken a few of you out, but some of you are still chasing a 10 out of 10 tonight, including Jerry Miller, Gene Kelly, Ian Bruce, Dancing Midgie Glenn, Pete Head, Rick Johnson, Whiskey Weekend Dram, Danny Hebbington, Martin M, lots and lots and lots of you on still a 9 out of 9. We're going to see some 10 out of 10s tonight. Here's the asshat at the end. It's always an asshat. It's always going to be an asshat. Even tonight it's an asshat. The answers, however, will be familiar, because the answers are the exact same 3 options as last week, just with a different question. Last question. How many distilleries, malt distilleries specifically, are currently operational in Scotland? So that is a Scotch malt distillery with in the name. How many distilleries do we have? I love these questions. About the same number as the number of A, distilleries on Skye and Rassay combined. B, brands co-hosting at the 2025 Glasgow Under the Table event. I know it's a bit obscure, but you were maybe tuned in last week and you already know this. And C, about the same as the number of years of age stated on the oldest bottled King's Barnes. These 3 answer options, as I say, were the same 3 as last week. But specifically, I want you to think about how many distilleries we have. A, distilleries on Skye and Rassay. B, brands that co-hosted the tasting on Friday at Glasgow Whisky Festival, Under the Table tasting, and just over a week ago. Almost 2 weeks ago, actually. Or C, the years of age stated on the oldest bottled King's Barnes. How many distilleries do we have? Benny Fries is in. Benny, how are you keeping, my friend? In football, if you score more goals than the opponent and concede fewer goals, you win, and deservedly so. Don't ever try arguing me on that. Huge congrats to Scotland, and best of luck from Denmark. Benny, you were in my thoughts, you were in my mind, yourself, and my friend Marcus as well, from Denmark. There's a few other Danish barflies too. I hope you don't mind, and I can tell by the generosity of your words there how much you don't mind, and how rare a thing you appreciate it is for Scotland to do what it managed to do, Benny, in order to raise a wee glass. If you don't mind, I'm going to pour a wee bit more of this Bowmore. Raise a glass to you in Denmark and wish you the very best of luck with the playoffs, my friend. Thank you for your generosity of spirit. Cheers to you, Benny. Okay, let's see how many of us have managed 10 out of 10 this week. I'll give you the answers first. Distilleries on Raasay and Skye combined. Of course, it's Torrevik, Talisker and Isle of Raasay 3. Brands co-hosting, same as last week. It was 7 brands co-hosting that tasting. Years of age stated on the oldest bottle, Kingsbarn, still the same as last week. As far as I know, 10 years old. But I can tell you, Rusk, Auchentoshan and Glentochers, 3. If you answered A, you're in good shape. There's a very, very good chance that you've managed a 10 out of 10 this week. Come on, bring it on. Use the emojis. Celebrate. Dave the Brave. First time I've mentioned you, buddy. Look at that. Bursting out the doors. 10 out of 10. Fantastic. Perfect icon as well to celebrate a 10 out of 10 tonight. Kyle Taylor is celebrating a 10 out of 10. Last minute change. Got me. Cheers to the 10 out of 10s. Okay, you slipped up, Kyle. Well, last minute change. Gids, of course, on a 10. Yes, we're back almost there along with Lowlander on a 9. Whisky Weekend Dram Harrow's celebrating a 10. Randy is celebrating a 10. Royal Vermeer on a 10. Ian Bruce on a 10. Fantastic. Daisy's on a 10 tonight. Superb. Dance Midgie Photography. Martin M. Oh, Jumps as well. There's so many. Just Jump Sugar Kitty on a 10. Gene Kelly. Rick Johnson. Peter Box. Gabriel. Jerry. Oh, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I wanted. It's been such a long time, says Pedro. We celebrating Jimmy Legs on a 10 out of 10 tonight. Even Jimmy's celebrating. X-Beige on a 10 out of 10 tonight. First time I've welcomed you in, X-Beige. Good to have you, Willie Dolly, on an 8. Petehead on a 9. Still strong scores. Stewie on a 9. But Danny Hibbington, the barflies are knowledgeable bunch, and I dedicate this to them clever bar stewards. He's taken his own 10 out of 10, but admitting he might have lent on the barflies a wee bit, which is fine. Congrats to all the 10, says Daisy. Royal Vermeer celebrating his 10. This is brilliant. It's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to kind of, just have fun and kind of. Scotland has been a lighter place to be around. The discussions, the chatter, the radio, the sharing that's going on direct messages and WhatsApp and things, the kind of celebration of Scottishness because of what happened on Tuesday night. It's been emotional. It's been an outlet. It's been a thing that we know we're not going to go far. We know we're not going to win the World Cup or whatever, just to be part of it. This tiny wee nation putting on a show like it did on Tuesday night. It's glorious. I can't match that next week, but I'm going to celebrate being here for 8 years next week. The shape of that has still been worked out and things, but I hope you'll welcome. I hope to be able to welcome you next week to celebrate that. If you have the 8-year-old Glasgow to raise a glass with me at some point, I would love us all to be able to sip the same whiskey at the same time, as many of us that can possibly. That's never happened on the vPub before, so it would be nice to do it. It's very much the reason behind that release. It's why it's out there, why there's so much of it, why we can all hopefully get a hold of it to share it together, but that's next week. For those of you on Patreon, I'll share with you the shape of that next week and build it over the weekend. But tomorrow I'm going to have a rest. It's been a busy week. And I bet you I'm going to rest by looking at videos and replays and all the memes and all the nonsense from the Scotland game on Tuesday night. And I hope you don't grudge me it. I think it was wonderful. Trippleberg is saying congratulations. Trippleberg, of course, is Hoyt. My pal Hoyt. Of course, yeah, buddy. Petehead is saying, and with that, another great vPub comes to an end. Thanks as always for organising Aquavita, and to all of you. See you next time for pouring the same dram. Slanchava. Thank you, Frank. Jimmy Leggett saying, you can win the World Cup, Scotland. McTominay is the new Ronaldo. He genuinely is. Cheers, Barfly, says Pedro. Always great to share those vPub moments with you, and that's coming from Brazil. Amazing, Pedro. Good to see you in, buddy. It's good to have you here. I hope I wasn't too negative tonight. I hope I kept it positive, and I hope when I was negative, I justified, at least in some way, some regard, and represented not only my own personal opinions, but the take from the community and the consensus of the community as well. Peter Lee has just dropped in to say hello, and Mikey has saying, gutted I can't join next week for the 8-year anniversary Aquavita. I'll be in Munich with work. Mikey, you never need to apologise, but you can feel disappointed and understand, buddy, if you pick up on the replay. Great. If not, we'll raise a glass in the future together. Don't worry about it, my friend. Rick George is saying thanks once again for another great vPub, Roy. Congratulations on Scotland's win. And here's to a day of rest. I'm looking forward to it, Rick. Danny Heaventon has bought me a very generous ram to say, watch the Oswas on Sunday, and you and Ralphie knocked it out of the park. Thank you. Thank you so much, Danny. Again, he's saying, slant you, mate. No Scotland, no party. No Scotland, no party. No Scotland, no party. No Scotland, no party. Yes. I still don't believe it's real. But yes, I was in my 20s the last time Scotland were at a World Cup finals. And my son is almost delirious that he's witnessing it while he's still in his teenage years. Thank you all for hanging out with me tonight to cover a topic that I think is dear to all our hearts once we arrive at a particular point in our whisky exploration journey, the realisation that those who care are able to represent what's made better than those that are in charge. Not all the time, but sometimes. And I think it's clumsy and cynical. I think they can do better, but it doesn't matter because there's millions of great whisky out there for us all to enjoy, to either agree with what I've presented you with tonight or disagree. And it's a beautiful thing about whisky. It's what it affords us. I look forward to hanging out with you next week where we celebrate 8 years of this thing, whatever it is. I'm looking forward to it as always, but right now I'll remind you all that you're very dearly loved. Slanchava.